don't remember this.
The samurai assignment, the entire first semester.
I remember yours. I don't remember mine.
You worked on it for like 4 months.
Did I do a novel? What did I do?
It had a big fur of some kind on it, I thought.
Oh, the Samurai King thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I still like that design. Yeah, that's right. Okay. Yeah, I would have gotten up and with that. Hello and welcome to this week's Pens and Pixels podcast. I'm your host, Cal G, and to my left, the coordinator extraordinaire,
Mike Kent.
The PopCast is the place you come to if you want to hear about all the what is so fucking funny.
Nothing.
The PopCast is the place you want to come to if you want to hear all about the art and news of video games, comics, and movies. This week we're going to be talking about all the newsy news you need to know. And then, after the break, we're going to be talking about game franchises we want to see come back.
Yeah.
Dead franchises, things that have been dormant for a long time.
This stuff doesn't come back yet at all. Like, not like the things where you're like, oh... You know,
not something we're waiting for a sequel for necessarily, but something that's just been long dormant.
It's not coming. Like, we haven't seen anything since probably PS2 days.
Yeah, that's general. We were looking at the PS1, PS2 days.
Yeah.
So if that sounds good to you, sit in your chair, clean, go work out, whatever you want to do while you're listening to us. Stay tuned. So our first segment up, unless you have do you have any housekeeping? I didn't even ask this. Any?
No, not really. I'm just really excited with the growth of everything lately. That's what's really cool. Like, I mean, the podcast is doing really, really well, and it's like kind of exponentially getting larger and larger. People are starting to like talk about us and mention it, and they're starting to like share and enjoy, and it's coming up in conversation with people involved in Pens and Pixels.
It's nice to see we have regular listeners too.
Yeah,
you know, the same places keep coming up from the.
I mean, like, we have local traffic, but it's actually not, like, that much more exponential in comparison, so it's not like just our friends and family are listening.
Yeah, it's like, our mom likes our podcast.
People think we're actually cool.
Oh, that internet radio show you do, honey, it's real nice. You boys swear too much. That would not be my mother.
Oh.
When I went home for Christmas, I vaguely told her, like, because I was editing one of the podcasts, and she was like, what are you doing? And I was like, I do a podcast, and she was like, what's that? And I was like,
internet radio.
It's like radio on the internet. And she was like, well, why can't it just be on the regular radio? And I was like, because no one would listen to us on the regular radio. No one would let us on air. Like,
we swear.
And she's like, so you can just do it? And I was like, yeah. Like, she has no concept of the internet. It's just people like barfing into a void. You know, like that's what Twitter is, right? It's just people yelling into nothing.
Well, there's all different versions of yelling into nothing. I'm yelling into nothing with a 6-second video.
So actually, first up, my apologies. We want to do a little correction segment.
Oh.
Yeah, we have 2 corrections from last week's podcast.
Cal.
Well, actually, the first bit of corrections came to me from our intern, our Pens and Pixels official intern.
We have an intern?
It's none of your concern.
Oh.
I expected more reaction. It's your company. He's going to love this.
Yeah. I don't even know the names of my employees. You're all just faceless.
When you get to be, you know, Steve Jobs level like Mike, you just lose track of all the faces that you interact with. So the first one is the Adam Sandler movie we reported on last week, The Ridiculous Six, was not actually Netflix's most viewed thing overall. It was the most viewed thing within a 30-day time frame. So still sad news, but just not as damaging to humanity as a whole. But that means it still did enjoy a #1 spot in all territories at some point. And
yeah. But I think I was saying that before, like, it was in context of Netflix as of that period, which was what I was expecting, because there's just no way.
I thought it was it was the most viewed thing ever on Netflix, which is crazy to me.
Well, that's the thing. I was even thinking about those numbers later. Like, the amount of times I've watched Buffy on Netflix, like, it's the amount of people who would have done the same thing. You had to have watched that movie, like, 6 times in a week, every week, and everyone on the planet would have had to have done that.
Yeah.
Like, we really fucking had to love that movie.
No, it's true.
But nevertheless, I find it also weird, though, is like Avengers Age of Ultron and some actually really mega popular movies came out on Netflix in the same month, and they still didn't get overwatched in comparison. Even Jessica Jones and...
People love that Adam Sandler. He's a wacky man.
No one likes Adam Sandler. Adam Sandler doesn't like Adam Sandler.
That's probably true at this point.
And I hate myself, but I keep doing it.
And this other bit is uplifting news. Straight from the mouth of the man himself, Guillermo del Toro. Last week we reported that Pacific Rim 2 was canceled.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, he did report it, and then now he backed it up, so I don't know if it was a correction.
Well, no, he didn't report that. That was a bunch of news stories. But Pacific Rim 2 is not canceled, and actually, as of this recording, that tweet is deleted. Oh, interesting. I just pulled it up to read what he said, but
well, I mean,
okay. Here's what he said. Pacific Rim 2 canceled. Don't believe everything you read. It's still going, and I'll remain with it one way or another.
See, what I was hearing from that, though, and I think this is why maybe it got deleted, is that it did get rejected. I think it did get rejected. I just don't think Guillermo del Toro's given up on it. I think he's going to pass it around to other studios. That is
what it sounds like, because it says don't believe it. If it's still going and he'll remain with it, that makes it sound like it is still on hiatus at this point.
But he hasn't given up.
No, yeah, exactly.
Which was actually part of our podcast. Oh, God, imagine if he listened.
I don't even care if he listened. The fact that he listened would be good enough for me.
No, we made the joke where he's like, he walks into a room and he's just like, okay.
That's right, the little skit.
Yeah. So now he's just like, don't listen to that. I stand up for these things.
Well, do you though, Galmore? Because now the latest news is, and this is my thing about Galmore, I love him dearly, but he has his finger in too many pies.
Way too many pies.
Too many pies for how many little fingers you have. The director of Hellboys and Pan's Labyrinth and Crimson Peak is developing a movie version of the classic children's book trilogy, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark.
Is he also doing an animated series right now?
Yeah, he's doing a million things at all times, and this just came out today that he's doing this movie. But this is he has a bunch of backlog projects. Like if you search his name, I'm sure you'll see like a billion things pop up, and he has another one now. But this is a cool thing to be doing. Like this is I wonder if it's going to be like a. It doesn't even seem like a movie thing. It seems like it could be a TV show because it was a bunch of short stories in this book.
Yeah,
with very. I want to say a little too scary for children drawings in those books, you know.
Too scary for children. Yeah,
they were pretty dark looking at the time, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, do you remember reading Roald Dahl books when you were a kid?
Yeah,
those are really upsetting. Like the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory actually is, or the glass elevator with the aliens that came to try and eat them, like the weird slug aliens and shit, or the BFG, or like the other, and they're making a movie about it, which the trailer looked great for, but all the bad giants, they're not just the big giants, I guess, not the friendly giants. Would like eat children and stuff, and they had to go in the caves and they saw all the bones of the kids that they ate, and like
I was never freaked out by that.
No, but it's dark stuff. Like you make a book about that now, and the parents are going to be like, "Oh my god!"
Yeah, but the drawings to this one look like you've seen these before, right?
Yeah.
They were pretty terrifying for a child. There was one about like spiders in the eyes or something like that, and they all popped out.
Yeah, Neil Gaiman does that shit. Buttons for eyes on its own is creepy. What the fuck ever? I'm sorry, people coddle their children too much.
Get real political now.
Come on, remember all the things we used to watch when we were kids when you were like 5 and your dad's like going to put on Roadhouse and just cover your eyes during the sex scenes?
Yeah, I watched Alien when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Which is...
I'm not scarred.
No, yeah, I'm fine. Yeah, it did... I wonder if anyone's really ever like truly affected by that, you know?
It's film and TV. Like, you don't ever...
You realize it's fake. Even at the time, you're scared by it, but you're not like... Yeah.
And even if you think the monsters are real, like, you gotta spend a few weeks in cowering in your bed, and then you get over it.
No, that's true. So next up, we'll do a little Marvel segment. Got a little Marvel news for you this week. Last week was a little dry. This week, ton of stuff came out. Ton of dumb stuff, too. Like, there was this hoodie that got released, a Spider-Man hoodie. Do you see this news?
No.
Spider-Man hoodie got released. It's the official Marvel licensed Spider-Man hoodie.
Yeah,
and it's like, does this reveal the design? It's just a hoodie with like a Spider-Man logo and like some, you know, it's just that Spider-Man.
Oh.
There's nothing. It's literally just you look at it and you're like, yeah, Spider-Man for sure. Like, I don't think it gives anything away about his appearance in Civil War or anything, you know.
What, is it just like flat color, no webbing on it?
No, there's webbing on it, but it's just not. It's nothing
special.
Too drastically different. Like, the one thing about I'm stoked about Spider-Man being in that movie, but I'm not really that curious what he's going to look like. He's going to look good.
Yeah, but the thing is that they're not going to change that outfit too much. Like, in the end, there's a certain level of iconicness. You can't... Like, Captain America's outfit is, I guess you would call drastically changed. But, like...
It's still
Captain America freaking costume. Like, they're always going to do that. And even with the new Spider-Man costumes, I mean, all they really did was make the webbing ribbed. So Spider-Man's ribbed for your pleasure, and that's about it.
Yeah, that's true. He looked really good in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I think that's the best he ever looked on screen.
Mm-hmm.
He had the big eyes, like he had almost like the...
That was the Dr. Octopus one.
No. I'm talking about the newest one with
Tobey Maguire.
I was going to say Toby Garfield.
God, you and the mixing.
Andrew Garfield, that's the man.
All of the humanity merges into characters for you. What was the last one?
Oh, yeah, I fucked up 3 names. Oh, I thought that Red Skull was Dolph Lundgren.
That's it.
Yeah.
So Dolph Lundgren and him are going to merge together, and God, there's all sorts of others.
And create the perfect being.
Dolph Lundgren wouldn't make the perfect being with anyone.
You don't know that.
Yes,
so the Russo brothers, the directors of Civil War, say they don't know if fans will be prepared for what the movie includes. Very ominous.
What does that mean?
I don't know, right? He said, "For us, we are really firm believers in stakes. We like movies with high highs and low lows. And we feel just like you get a more well-rounded experience in that type of film. Now that we're engaged in serialized storytelling, it starts with Winter Soldier and it ends with the Infinity War movies. We feel it's very important that those 4 films, Civil War and both Infinity War movies, have a very profound effect on the audience. I think a lot of shocking things are going to happen, which is really interesting because you haven't had this kind of, maybe other than Harry Potter, I guess you can count the Bond series, but the kind of investment over a period of time with this many characters behaving in a universe. I think our job is to send you on a very profound experience between now and 2019, and it starts with Civil War. I don't know if people will be prepared for what this movie is going to include."
You just said a whole lot of nothing with a lot of words. There was nothing in there that was anything. That was like Mastercraft interview without revealing.
Okay, well, he expanded on that by saying Spider-Man, Black Panther, and Vision will have strong arcs in Civil War.
Which is interesting on the Vision front. Because, I mean, they're not going to introduce Spider-Man and just be like, and he swung in. Like, they're going to have something. But Black Panther we kind of expected. Vision, though, I mean, like, he was introduced in the last movie and they did a good job, but you are kind of expecting more.
No, it's I just wonder how much they're going to be tackling with this movie, you know? Like, is this going to be like a 5-hour-long movie? Like, how much can you possibly get in there if Vision's going to have a whole arc and Spider-Man's going to have a whole arc?
It is sounding crowded and scarily crowded at that.
Yeah, because even the trailer they showed was mostly focused on
Bucky, Captain, and Iron Man.
Cap, and Iron Man, right? Like, and the shit getting kicked out of each other. Like, that was kind of what was going on in that trailer. So it's going to be interesting. What they said was Spider-Man enters the movie after the Avengers pick sides. He doesn't have a huge investment politically, but he develops a very personal relationship while he picks his side. I won't talk about the personal relationship he develops, but it's very interesting. One of the most special parts of the movies.
It's starting. The thing is these movies are running into issues that do happen in comic books, and some of these comic book crossovers or I don't want to call them multiverse, but just like just the crossover comic books have a problem with too much going on. So in a previous podcast, I mentioned I don't know if it was the Infinity Crusade is the name of it. I really think that's what it was called. But it was an arc, a series where Warlock's because Warlock splits himself into 2 pieces, right?
Yeah.
He's got the evil one that's the purple dude, and I forget the name of him. And then they've got heaps later on in this series, his good side is the goddess, right? The female version. And in this part of the arc, she goes off and gathers all the cosmic cubes, makes an egg, and wants to burn the universe, right? And in doing that, she mind controls a whole bunch of different heroes and villains, and it's basically like the entire Marvel cinematic universe or comic book universe versus the entire Marvel comic book universe, like just everybody. And when you read it, every page 2 cells is like a battle that happens on this planet, and it's like Mr. Fantastic, Doctor Strange, and Scarlet Witch versus Wolverine, Gamora, and the Thing, right? And then in 3 cells, it's like Scarlet Witch holds her hand up, Doctor Strange glows, something falls over, 2 guys are taken out in a single punch in fights where they would have lasted a lot longer. Next page, right? Like, that's what's going to happen to these movies as all these heroes get in, and they're planning 63 characters for an Infinity.
Yeah, that's the rumor, that's the number flying around right now, like something like 63 characters, which is crazy.
Yeah. Like, it's running into the Batman v Superman issue, where it's like, too many things.
Well, to Marvel's credit, I don't feel like even in the Avengers movies that there were ever too many heroes on screen.
That's the thing I never did with even Age of Ultron. Like, no matter how much you think of that movie, it didn't feel crowded.
It didn't, and there were a lot of characters too. But I felt everyone got enough screen time.
Yeah.
You know, but now, like the Civil War seems like it's gonna have a lot of things going on. It's the introduction to Spider-Man. You got to focus on Cap and Iron Man, obviously. Bucky's gonna have a huge arc.
Yeah.
Ant-Man's gonna be in there still. Vision's having a whole thing now. Like
Scarlet Witch is in there.
I wonder what they define as an arc though. Like, is it gonna be like 3 scenes where like first Vision's like, I'm conflicted about how I feel about humanity, and then by the end he's like, they kind of suck. You know, like is that really going to be the end of it? And like,
I don't know.
You know, is it not going to be like a huge in-depth thing? Or
I have more faith in this movie than I do with Batman vs Superman, which keeps releasing stuff. Stop telling us about the movie.
Yeah, I didn't even.
There's another new character hero, the villain. There's another villain outside of Lex Luthor and Doomsday now in it.
Oh, I didn't even see that. I didn't.
I read that yesterday. There's another one that's apparently coming, and it's like I didn't even read the article because it's like you'll never guess who the other secret villain is.
Oh wow, there's a clip they released this week too that I didn't watch. So I'm just gonna lay off that movie until it comes out, and I want to see how it's gonna be. You know?
Stop. I know everyone knows the movie now. Like,
no, they said
spoiling a movie.
They said that you didn't see the final act in that trailer.
The final act is going to be 30 seconds long.
No, they mean the last third act, like the.
No, they're going to have to split it up into 30 acts of 30 seconds each. Like, I don't know. Like, jeez, I have no faith in that one. None whatsoever. I think even Ben Affleck at this point is kind of like.
I think his Batman will probably be the best thing about that movie.
I think Ben Affleck can be a great Batman. I've got nothing against him as in that role, but
no. But I'm saying, like, even if the movie turns out to be like a little, I think that he will be the standout thing about that movie, just like the Joker was in Dark Knight.
Yeah, but the Dark Knight was also a superb movie.
Mm-hmm.
I would just feel bad for Ben Affleck that his second, maybe it's his third or second attempt at a superhero. If it flops. You know how much
this movie won't flop. I mean, critically, it could be middling or whatever. Financially, I think it's going to be just fine.
Oh, financially, it'll be fine. I mean, Daredevil wasn't a financial flop. It made money.
They did?
Yeah.
That was so long ago, I don't remember.
I remember it making a chunk of change, because at the time, superhero movies were a big hit. It's not a financial flop, but to this day, everyone makes fun of him for it, right? It's kind of the same deal.
Well, it was real bad.
It was real bad.
Real bad. And the Russos also commented on General Ross, who, if you don't know, is the general in The Incredible Hulk, actually. Which is canon to this whole thing, right? Like, the one with Edward Norton, the Incredible Hulk movie. That's crazy. It seems so, like...
Whatever happened to his girlfriend from that? Like, they did kind of wash those movies out, even though they're considered the canon movies.
Yeah.
Because, like, at the end, he's like, I love you, and he did run away, but then he's like, alright, now Black Widow. Like,
I wonder if there'll be any mention of this movie. No, because he's not going to be in Civil War, I don't think, actually.
What, Hulk?
Yeah.
No, but I mean, General Ross is, and he has his daughter, and then like,
that's true.
He's going to show
up.
But
he might not even say anything, right?
Like, or anything else. Like, it's just this girl who's been like chased around by a giant monster who dumped her.
Yeah,
the giant monster dumped her.
well, and he's in love with Black Widow now, or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, doesn't matter. The Russos, I won't read this whole thing, but they just seem to be pushing a lot that they just keep saying he's much smarter now. He's much more this. He's much better now. They just keep saying like. They're almost saying, like, this is a different character. Like,
he's not shitty like the other one.
Yeah, they do say he's a character who was ham-fisted in his approach in The Incredible Hulk, and that's probably a polite way to put it.
That sounds so dirty, too. Ham-fisted?
Ham-fisted.
Like, put a ham on your fist and then fist?
That's a fairly common term when someone has, like, bad writing. They call it, like, ham-fisted.
No, it's a common term. I've heard it before, but, I mean, all I picture is someone takes, like, a whole ham... sticks it on their hand, like the cartoon hand with the bone in it, and just goes boop.
I picture more like not that someone put the hand in a ham, but more like their hand is a ham, like a half split ham.
And then the first thing people look at is like, oh, I want that to fist me.
Ham fisting is an entirely different subject. Ham fisted and ham fisting.
It's already honey glazed, so I guess you don't need lube.
That's good. You're not wrong. So the X-Men. Remember them? Remember the X-Men?
I miss the X-Men.
Well, I mean, they're still around, Mike.
No, they're not. They're dead. They died.
It's really... So, the weird thing with the X-Men movies is, like, I continually, in my mind, I always think to myself, I'm like, those movies aren't that good. But then I'll watch First Class. I really enjoyed First Class.
No,
I love First Class.
They're not bad movies at all. But they're not my X-Men.
No, I guess that's true.
And they get washed into the background. I forget about it until someone brings it up. And it's only because of good media and campaigning that the X-Men keep popping up.
Well...
Like, they're good movies, but they're not memorable in the way that Iron Man, Avengers...
I just feel like it would be so much better if they were just in the MCU.
Just go back to the MCU.
For sure. But, the X-Men spin-off movie Gambit is going to begin production in March. Played by... Mike's favorite... Channing Tatum.
He's really hot, but, like, that's all he is.
Is he? He kind of looks like a potato to me.
I don't know. There's something like very like physically attractive about him, but like outside of that, I mean, even in Foxcatcher, he plays a doorstop the whole time. He's supposed to like almost have no emotions and be a brain dead like athlete kind of thing. Not brain dead. What is that called? You know, like you're just like
meathead.
Meathead. Thank you. I'm glad you got that before I had to go through the whole impression. He's just like a bit of a meathead, which, I mean, yeah, he did that role fine, but like telling someone to like act like they don't know anything, like he didn't really have to go very far.
Look, like Gambit is,
and the hair, and the like. I'm gonna put on a French accent. He's like, "Oh, I am Creole."
So he has really dumb hair right now.
Yes,
because he was just photographed at the Oscars, I believe it was.
Yeah,
and he has this like stupid like.
Well, he's trying to stylize hair he needs to have for the movie. I don't know why I'm so hard on him about.
I just hope that's not the hair from the movie.
He's totally got that parted down the middle. You know he does.
Gambit's a weird character because he was always really cool to me, but only in the comics and like in the video games. Mm-hmm. And then every other time I saw him, I didn't really like him as much. Even in the X-Men cartoon, wasn't a huge fan of him. Mm. You know, and he was in Wolverine Origins.
But that wasn't right.
Well, that wasn't right. It wasn't. He was terrible. Who was he played by?
I don't even know who that was. I think he was the guy who played Lestat in that bad Queen of the Damned movie.
Yeah.
But whoever that was doesn't matter. Or that movie. But no, I love Gambit. Gambit was a big character of mine. I was a big fan of the whole Rogue Gambit relationship for the longest time, the original Rogue. And Gambit was a great character. He was a lot of fun. He was kind of goofy. His power was really cool.
His power was real cool.
The whole thief thing was really neat. His design was really fun. His French thing was neat. The Thieves Guild was fun. Like, there was great. And a massive backstory. And one of the most drawn-out X-Men secret histories ever. Like,
was it?
Yeah, like, his whole, like, hidden secret as to why he was, like, connected to Mr. Sinister. And all of that jazz, and his whole deep secret, and he was the traitor to the X-Men all that time. And
I love Mr. Sinister.
Mr. Sinister was amazing.
His stupid cape thing. So cool. So good.
And he was great from some of his reimaginings of, like, a psychotic professor thing. But yeah, like, you know what the secret was in the whole thing in the original series?
No, what?
No. Do you remember the Marauders and the whole, like, Murlocs thing in the X-Men? Yeah, like, he was one of the ones who killed a lot of the Murlocs and all that for Sinister. In agreement to, like, try and shrunk his powers down or else he would explode and, like, blow up everyone.
Oh.
Because his powers were, like, big and he was, like blowing up a whole, I don't know, like a section of the Earth or some shit like that. So he killed all of, like, or helped kill a lot of the Murlocs as one of the Marauders for Sinister.
Interesting.
And then, like, ever since then, they've kind of had like a bond, and that's why he's always kind of had an interest or care for Gambit. And that was, like, why he was considered the traitor of the X-Men, etc., etc. Anyways, great character, awesome character, and I think is totally worthy of all the X-Men, right? Other than Wolverine, who we've tried to make solo movies for. Gambit is one of the other X-Men who deserves a solo story, because there's enough there to make it work.
I think Jubilee would be cool. Solo movie. The look on Mike's face when I said that was just, it went from just
Jubilee's amazing,
total like sorrow.
She was one of my favorite characters, but
oh man, I was kidding.
No, she's great. I loved her. I thought she was fun, and I love Gen X. But God, no, there's no story there. Angsty teen is angsty about her powers being angsty.
Yeah, why not? I mean, great movie.
You could do a TV show about it and like make it like Buffy.
Well, anyways.
Oh.
So yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in that Gambit movie, but who knows? That could be great.
Nope.
Okay, it can be great.
So
earlier this week, there was an interview with George Miller, and he was quoted as saying he will not be making any more Mad Max movies. Internet cried in unison. Then he came out and he said, "She completely got the wrong fragments of information that were just not true. I said, no, another Mad Max will not be next, and she took that to mean I will never make another Mad Max. It won't necessarily be next, but I have 2 more stories." So he wants to do 2 more anyways. I remember writing that story, I was like, oh, this will be a good topic for the podcast. And then, 2 days later, he just, corrected it, and I was like, oh, well, good thing we don't have to correct that next week.
I wish I connected to that movie more. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not a bad movie. It was a good movie, blah, 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 blah. We've been over this. But, I wish I could get into it. I have a friend who, she's this, classic rocker glam girl. She actually, she writes for, and creates her own comic book called Penny and Aggie. She's done work with Archie. She does another one called Menage a Trois. Really great little comic artist, very Archie style, but with an adult twist. But she used to be an actual glam band girl. Like, she was part of a band that I think I actually knew of. Like, she was actually kind of famous. There's actually a video of her like playing at like the Montreal Center and shit, with the giant like black afro hair that all the girls had back then.
Cool.
Anyway, so Mad Max, totally up her lane, right?
Yeah.
And she watches it, and she just watched it the other week, and she's all like, "Oh my god, greatest movie in existence!" Blah blah blah. And I'm like, why didn't I like? There was nothing wrong. I liked the movie, but why am I not connected to it more?
It must be that you just heard so much hype beforehand that I think it just rose your expectations to, you know.
I was expecting to get that connection the whole time, and I was waiting so hard for it, and I want it. I want it so bad, and I've rewatched it, and I wish it was that good.
The weird thing is, me and my buddy, we were super hyped for it. We saw all the trailers, and we were like, "This is gonna be the greatest movie ever." And then it turned out it was the greatest movie ever to us. Like that, it just, you know, we weren't disappointed at all, which rarely happens. Usually, when I have my expectations high, I'm disappointed.
Well, that's a Star Wars for me. I went into that expecting that to be like, okay, I can't let this be. It's gonna be the greatest movie ever. And I run in there and I'm like, wee! And then the whole movie was just like me riding a roller coaster, wee, around the room the whole time. Like, yeah, it does happen. That movie didn't.
Not every movie's for everybody. I can see how you'd feel left out though, because it does get a gratuitous amount of love around just in general, right? Like,
yeah. And I'm thinking, like, I'm at this point now, I'm just angry that I can't get it now. So every time I watch it, I'm like, everyone else loves it. I can't love it.
But you don't hate it either. Like,
No.
that's the thing. It's you like it, but no, it's not to the extent everyone else does.
I just wish I could.
You just weren't. Your hair was not just blown back.
I want it so bad.
Yeah. No, that's completely understandable. You want what I have, and what I have is amazing. It's a deep, deep love for Tom Hardy.
Who has, like, no lines.
No, and it's great. Holy fuck. Oh my god, I love that he doesn't talk that much. Oh my god. Should watch that right now. Fuck the podcast. So next up, Ridley Scott says there's going to be a hard R rating for Alien Covenant. When a reporter commented on fans being interested in the horror aspect of the Alien series, Ridley Scott responded, "That's why I'm doing it. I'm going to do it a pretty hard R." I'm going to do a pretty hard R is what he said. Like,
It sounds like doing a really bad sexual position. I'm going to give it the really bad hard R.
Gave her that D, gave him the hard R. The hard rim.
No, it's interesting, though. I mean, like, Ridley Scott invented this sci-fi space horror. Like,
So, well, he goes on to say that he wants to do a scene with the same sort of impact of the original Aliens chestburster scene, but something much worse.
I hope.
I mean, that's not even, you know, I'm not looking to go to an alien movie to get shocked, I don't think. I don't really know.
No, but, okay, so with those movies, right, I mean, the Alien was a Ridley Scott creation, but also an H.R. Geiger creation. And like we were talking about in the last podcast when we said that the Alien is this, like, really creepy thing because of that loop and how it represents pregnancy, life, and, like, you know, sexuality, violation, and rape, and a lot of other things. It's culmination of so many things that we've never seen before, and then the imagery of the creature, the tongue that's like phallic, the vaginal face grabber with the penile vag, like there's this that's H.R. Geiger, right?
Yeah.
You know, a wall of asses, like
Wall of ashes and Dixon. Yeah,
like that's you know, like that's H.R. Geiger, and I think that's also why the visuals tied into Ridley Scott's vision, and it came out like that. So I think it's a lofty goal for him to do without having H.R. Geiger invent something that has that much psychology behind it.
Yeah,
but that's what he's trying to want to do, and if he pulls it off, and he does make that next thing, because like facehuggers define horror now, like parasites that jump on you and shoot shit down your throat and put a monster in you and then you burst or whatever.
It's the most like something is living and gestating in you, right? Like it's a huge violation. It's horrifying to think about.
Yeah.
Something changing you like that. It's, you know, Ridley Scott's been real up and down.
It's
you know,
true.
That's the thing. Like he's just been real up and down in the last decade or so. Maybe before that, I don't really know. But like the last decade or so, he's been real up and down. He just won a lot of awards though for something he just did.
Martian?
That's what he did. The Martian. That's right. And that's up for a bunch of Oscars.
So, everyone's like, "Oh, he's back," and I'm like, "But he didn't write The Martian. It's a book.
No,
it's literally the book. Like, there's no deviation in his creation of that movie. He just cuts stuff out.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to say.
He's just a really good editor at that point, you know. And it got carried by Matt Damon's performance. Why the fuck was The Martian in the comedy part of the Golden Globes?
I don't know, man. You tell me. I didn't see that movie yet.
Ricky Gervais made jokes about it throughout the entire Golden Globes. Like, The Martian is got comedic moments because Mark Watney's kind of.
But you would never call it a comedy.
It's not a comedy.
Like, it's not going up against Knocked Up and.
What it was, like in the list was like Pixels and shit like that.
Oh. Why?
Yeah. But like that's what I mean. Like, it was up against comedies like Knocked Up. It was up against Spy. Melissa McCarthy's movie.
Yeah, things actually intended to be comedies.
Yeah, and then The Martian got put in there in its nomination when it wasn't put in anything else.
Real weird.
Fucking Golden Globes.
John Hamm won the Golden Globes.
What did he win? Don't know.
Sorry, what? I was thinking
win?
about John Hamm. Moving on. So the next news story, something that dropped last night, started getting a lot of buzz. The 10 Cloverfield Lane. So this premiered in front of 13 Hours. Michael Bay's latest movie.
Okay.
I had no idea that was even a thing.
I didn't know that.
But it premiered last night, and this just all of a sudden came out in front of it, and there was a couple like shaky cam vids of this thing happening, and everyone was like, "Oh, this game's happening," and like now, it looks really cool. So, but you have you have some reservations.
No, I don't have a reservation. I'm just worried. So, I mean, they're allowed to take a movie any direction they want afterwards, as long as they're really creative with it. But if anyone doesn't know who's listening and hasn't seen Cloverfield, it wasn't cult, but it wasn't major. I've run into a lot of people who haven't seen Cloverfield.
I feel like it was pretty major.
Yeah.
I feel like at the time it was pretty big. Maybe it was just the crowd I was running in.
It was definitely one of the first of those camcorder films that ever since came off of and only been executed maybe twice correctly, Chronicle being another one.
Look,
the camcorder thing?
Is that found footage?
Yeah.
I mean, found footage. There's a lot of good examples of found footage films.
Like,
do you want me to go through a bunch of horror movies right now?
Oh, horror movies. Okay.
Yeah, horror movies are notorious for being found footage films.
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like,
I'm talking about in general, like just like because like Cloverfield has its horror elements, but it's really more like a kind of like a thriller.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't call it a horror movie.
It's more of a thriller for sure, and it's got some really good high tension moments. But anyway, so it's about this giant monster that rampages through New York and has all these little babies that fall off of it and bite things and they pop and explode. And anyways, so
sorry, wait 1 second. For context, the synopsis of this movie that's leaked is if you haven't seen the trailer already, go watch it. It's great. But John Goodman, these two people wake up when they see John Goodman, and in that scenario, I'd be like, this is great. I don't even care if it's the apocalypse.
John Goodman.
John Goodman kidnapped me. Of course, I'll live with you. That's fine. But he tells these people, this girl and this guy. He's like, I saved you. There's fucked up stuff going on up there, and I saved you. You need to stay with me down here in this cellar.
Isolated bunker.
It's a little isolated bunker thing, and it turns out, maybe he's acting a little creepy or something, and they want to escape. Maybe he's being abusive. Who knows? It wasn't super clear. But that's basically how it's going. Like, there's something sinister going on, maybe.
Yeah.
So my hope for this movie is that that is basically all of the first 10-15 minutes of the movie, what we saw in that trailer, and then they get outside, and then we see maybe the after effects of Cloverfield.
I hope it's something close to that. I mean, they can split up the time a little bit longer, but the way the movie played out was that like the movie is about them hiding out in this bunker the whole time. Which, as my point with this giant monster movie is like, it's Cloverfield. We want to be seeing some Cloverfield monsters, and we want to be seeing it throughout because. Like, Cloverfield, while you never really saw the monster throughout the whole movie, it was always around shaking shit up or smacking things down.
Until the very end when he snuck up on that guy.
That was great.
How did a 60-foot beast
that causes earthquakes.
stealthily sneak up on this man?
Yeah. That causes earthquakes with its every step. Like, yeah. Anyways. But it's about this giant monster. So unless something else has happened, and I'm sure they're going to have some sort of story or plot line to fill it in, like I really don't want it to focus in as being this isolation movie. There's a term for that where the movie takes place in one room the whole time.
Well, one of our favorite movies of last year was kind of like that. It was Ex Machina. It took place in a very small, intimate setting.
Oh, I think those movies can work great. Yeah.
But that's just not your hope for a Cloverfield sequel.
Yeah, because you're going to have these giant monsters out there, and or giant monster, or just tiny monsters, or whatever. It's a survival thing. Like, I want to see what happened. And I don't want it to be in the last 20 minutes that she runs out and she's like, oh, look, there's death.
I think it could be done well either way. Like, I'm not in your camp where, like, I need to be seeing that. If the movie was mostly in that cramped little basement with John Goodman.
Oh, I don't think I would hate it at all.
I think I'd be fine with it.
Still do great. But I do want to see more. Like, don't call it Cloverfield and Cloverfield 2 and then just have, like,
it's 10 Cloverfield Lane, and they're calling it... The official thing is it's a blood relative to Cloverfield. It's not a sequel. It's a blood relative.
What would that even mean?
I don't know. I think they mean spiritual successor.
Huh.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense.
No. They're not... No one's saying sequel.
No.
Yeah. So...
But still... Why call it Cloverfield if it's not a sequel?
Spiritual successor could be in the same universe.
But then, what? I don't get it.
It could be a different... Look at it. Isn't it interesting that, like, you could have this whole little contained story, even though all that other stuff is going on up there? You know? This is still happening while...
Yeah, but how much does the world suck for that week? It's like, over on 10 Cloverfield Lane, you know, you've got, I don't know, zombies or some shit going on. Then New York gets hit by a giant monster, and then the third movie is going to be, like, you know... Toronto getting swarmed by bugs or something. Like, it's just gonna be like the worst week in human history.
It could be, and that's what the whole trilogy could be called: the worst week in human history. You're selling it yourself, Mike. I don't know how you're not loving this. Look, just give me an hour and a half close up of John Goodman's face. I'm okay with that.
God,
just play the Roseanne theme, like very faintly in the background. Those sweet saxophones.
For that, all I'm seeing is a Clockwork Orange and me being strapped to a chair with my eyelids taped open. Yeah.
And I'm just sitting there like pants off, just enjoying my time. Right beside Mike. Mike's
Stop it! I beg you, please.
Two very different experiences. So some more upsetting news. Mike, you seemed especially turned off by this one. Netflix to block proxy access to content not available locally.
Fuck you.
So it seems like they're going to be cracking down, and even if you use some sort of VPN private network thing, there's still when you connect to it, you're still going to end up in our case, Canada.
Okay, there needs to be a worldwide board made for releasing films, right? And this is kind of something that's been in the works that they've been trying to do, but you know, like with China and Japan and regulating movies and stuff in China and most of like Asia and Japan being so big on pirating and stuff like that, it's so hard to control your content over there, and their regulations and rules don't fall into place, you know, so it's really hard to manage pretty much most of Asia, you know, because like Asia, India, Japan, you know, Africa, like all of those places, they're just pirate central, right? Like figuratively and literally. I am the captain now.
Aye.
But so I get why they have trouble with that part of it there, and they can't make a regulatory board that fits to all of it with that. But the thing is with us, like the fact that there's a difference between Canadian and U.S. Netflix.
Look, Canada's Netflix isn't that bad.
But it's not great. Its selection is the weakest among most of the ones that are at least in like
every region has something different, I've found. We're both just admitting using VPNs.
Oh yeah,
that doesn't matter.
No.
But like for a long time, I was exclusively using the UK's for a while because they had a bunch of horror movies that I couldn't get on US or Canada. Yeah. And I could watch Better Call Saul there. But then I have to go to Canada to get some stuff. You know, if I want like Shark Tank or something, that's only here. Or Dragon's Den.
The majority of that stuff that I watched was on the US Netflix and Canadian Netflix. The majority. And US had more. So like, big Star Trek fan. I don't know if it still has it, because that's the other thing that pisses me off about the Canadian Netflix. Most of the US content stays there for a good long time before they take it out. The Canadian Netflix cycles shit out all the time. So they did at some point, I think it's gone, have Voyager, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, all that on Canadian Netflix.
Yeah.
I think it's gone now.
And the rights probably expired to it. And then
yeah, it's like it's gone for 6. It was on for 6 months and it's gone.
Here's the thing: like I know Netflix is trying to honor the people who are providing them with movies, right? Like because there's different distribution rights in different territories.
Well,
I get
their
that.
motivation is honorable.
No, I get that because they're just trying to look good, and they're they're a publicly traded company, and all this stuff. They need to appear good in the eyes of all these companies that are providing them content.
Yeah,
understandable. Here's the thing: I don't know if they realize this, but people are just probably going to start pirating stuff more now.
Yeah,
because it's always about convenience. In most cases, the reason people pay for Netflix is because you can just do a movie. You don't have to go to any torrent site. You don't have to go find some weird streaming weird site.
I'm trying to find the right person who ripped it.
You can just turn on Netflix and do exactly. Do whatever you want, right?
No viruses.
Yeah, exactly. It's clean and convenient. But if you can't get what you need anymore for free, people are going to start going out. They're probably not going to go to whatever service you provide, or they're not going to go to the store and buy your Blu-ray. They're probably going to go to Pirate Bay or what everyone else is up now, Kick-Ass Torrents, and download your shit.
Yeah, and not only that, but there are other streaming services out there like
Hulu,
and we have Show Me is our local one. It's actually from here in Ottawa. It started here in Ottawa.
Really interesting.
They you remember we worked in Canada? Mm-hmm. They were just down the road from us. Yeah. Show Me's actually got some good selection on there, and even some shows they made there, like iZombie started on Show Me, right?
No, it started on CW.
Did it?
Yeah.
I thought it was on Show Me.
No, CW premiered that show.
Did it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It might be on Show Me, but
okay. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But they had some proprietary shows that they released that are quite good, those services are out there. So now people are going to be subscribing to other services to use that, which will provide them with more money, and so basically they're making their own competition by doing this.
Yeah, it's I always wondered if Netflix ever cared about that, because so many people were obviously using VPNs to access their content. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that most of them don't care at all, but I think they have to do this to look good as a company and all. Well,
they did do rounds of blocking because certain VPN services suddenly stopped working periodically. Mm-hmm. And it was
they talked about this. I think a year and a half ago. They're going to start cracking down on it, but nothing ever came of it. And I think it just kind of left the public consciousness. No one had to worry anymore. Mm-hmm. And now this comes out, and I don't know when this is going to take effect, but everyone out there, enjoy the content while you can.
I really hope that it doesn't work. I hope even then that someone finds a workaround to it, which I'm sure someone will.
Oh, it's another thing. I bet someone probably will.
Yeah, but it's just until then, all you're doing is just giving everyone a middle finger. Yeah,
no, it's a tough situation. You can't they don't want to look bad, but and I've just seen leagues of people just saying well, I'm unsubbing to Netflix and I'm not going to subscribe to Netflix anymore. Yes, you are.
Yes, you are. You're not touching your subscription.
You're not going to. Yeah.
You're not touching your subscription
anymore. No, because you're still going to be fine. End of the day.
Yeah, I'm not going to watch Daredevil.
Yeah, exactly right. Okay, so enough about movies. Enough about film. That medium. Who cares about film?
That's so archaic.
It's very archaic. You just sit there, just veg out, just see the screen, see pretty men in front of you dancing or whatever they're doing. No, you want to control these pretty men dancing. An active medium, video games. Let's get into some video game news in our weekly segment, the Final Fantasy 15 news. That's right. That's what we're going to start off with here. I
can't believe it's a weekly segment.
I know. So
I love these guys on the news they release, though, because every time they release news, I'm not guys, shut up. You're not saying anything important.
I just get more and more excited.
Everything they say, I'm you're saying everything right.
Yeah, my dick gets a little more erect every week for this fucking game. Just a little more.
Think of the Oatmeal comic where it's I think I'm paraphrasing this, but it's all the news we get, it's like having sex but getting to put your pee in only once. It's basically what it's like, because it is. It's just the little doot, and you're that's all you get, and you're
that's true. Actually, that's a pretty good metaphor. So they're supposed to have that thing in March, right? Going on the big event where they're going to announce release date. Apparently, there's going to be another one called the Active Time Report, which they've been doing periodically. At the end of January.
You think I'd be oh god, guys, just do the March one? Yes, please have another event.
More events. Pile it into our mouths. Let us gorge.
Have a weekly event.
So there was an interview, and the question was, how much of the big cities will we be able to explore? Mm-hmm. And he said, I can tell everyone a little about Alticia at this time, which is apparently the name of one of the big cities. It has many varied locations, multiple cafes, shipborne marketplaces, and parks. The city is a considerable scale to the extent that even the developers get lost there sometimes.
That's not a good thing to point out. If it's going to be so big that the developers get lost, what are we going to be getting in there? Where do I go? What do I do? For like hours.
The player is free to leisurely walk around the complex maze of streets. They even call it a complex maze of streets. Or ride the gondola to see the sights, and there's also the added enjoyment to be had looking for restaurants to visit. You are bound to encounter some unique characters exploring the city streets.
God, you're going to be like level 5 for like 2 days just getting around that city.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to be like, I want to find the secret thing to give me the item before I go.
Oh, where's the fat chocobo? Yeah, exactly, right? You want to see that shit. Next question was, how will the difficulty modes compare in terms of XP gain, enemy stats, damage, and AI? The equivalent to difficulty level settings in Final Fantasy XV is a system where you can switch between different battle modes. By having this ability to switch modes, we want to make it so that both players who like action-oriented technical gameplay and those who like to fight at a slower, more relaxed pace can enjoy the combat in their own style. This switching system is a key part of the gameplay that we decided to introduce based on the feedback we received from the episode Duskade demo.
Which I love, that the whole demo thing I've said before, but that's also old school style. Like, we've had that before in other games, right?
I can't...
Final Fantasy 9.
What about Final Fantasy 9?
They had an option where you could have it choose to be real-time game combat, or that when your menu popped up, it paused, and then you had to wait make your selection, and then the game would play.
Really?
Yeah. There's a couple of games like that.
Interesting. But this is action-based, so like, what do they mean by a slower, more relaxed pace?
I think it means that when it turns... Like, there is a... I mean, like, everything is action as you click on it and stuff like that, but I think maybe when you're doing your selection for your target, right? Either it pauses or slows down.
Oh, maybe like Mass Effect, even when you go into that wheel thing, and it time slows.
It slows, and you can make a moment to take a selection and kind of like figure it out. Or
and, like, kind of ruminate, like, should I use this here or something?
Or you can have full flow.
That's kind of interesting.
Which I agree with. I mean, some people need to stop and take a moment. Like, they can't handle a constant combat loop, especially in a game that is open world, as I quote in the air. And that, like, if you run and then you hit a monster, they'll chase you, but if you're in that fight and another monster's nearby, that monster will also join in, and you could just end up being swarmed because the area is too clustered together, right? So, like, that could be a real long fight. And without a chance to, like, pause it and think, like, okay, what am I going to do next?
My anxiety about this is that, like, I love that this is a thing, but I'm just like, are you guys concentrating on all the right things? Are you good? Are you making the game as good as you can? Are you focusing too much on this, like, other thing? Just make it for me. Make it the fast one.
No, I think it's a good option to put in, and it's not even a big thing. They're like,
no, if it is just what
in
you're
code,
saying,
it's like add pause option, end line. Like, that's it. Like, what focus is that?
And that was the sound of Mike Kent devaluing thousands and thousands of jobs across game development as a whole.
Okay, function, enter, pause.
That was my slow clap for Mike.
I have lots of developer friends. They know I get it.
And the last thing they asked was, will large buildings have multiple warp points to allow Noctis to scale and explore rooftops? And he says, why, of course they will. The warp ability lets you teleport instantly to high-up locations, and it's a vital part of Final Fantasy XV's battle system. The ability to use multiple warp points is in a strategic manner is especially prevalent in the game's large-scale battles over urban terrain. It's not just buildings, though, and will also create exciting aerial battles with flying foes and gigantic boss enemies, so watch out for those.
Thank God, because, I mean, they showed off a lot of that in the original trailer sequence for any of the actual combat for Final Fantasy 15. When they switched over to Final Fantasy 15, was that great sequence where Noctis is going through, like, this, it's like half-collapsed building while all the war stuff's going on outside, and he's, like, throwing his sword down the end of the hall, and then he flashed at the end, and there'd be a guy who jumped through a window, and then he threw it, like, behind him, and then appeared behind him and stabbed him, and, like, you're flashing around using this sword. You didn't really get that in the Duskade demo, because it was just this grasslands open field, and you really couldn't connect the sword to anything except for 2-foot-high rocks. So you weren't really teleporting around except for towards your enemy every time, because you can latch it onto an enemy and fly towards them and then whack, 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 and throw it to another one and whack, 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 right?
Very cool.
Which, I mean, is an old school technique, but, you know, great. But there wasn't really much flying around. And all the times you could in that game, like, you could attach yourself to, like, if you were near a polar or something like that, you could, like, attach up higher. But then you just sit up there, and then all you could do is throw yourself back down at the enemies. Like, there was no use for it. It was cool, but, like, it never played a function. And then now the fact that they're planning to, like, make it that you can free-form around, which brings me to, like, my final point also, is that I hope this includes more areas and level. Every Final Fantasy to date has been your character's locked on the ground. I want a Final Fantasy, finally, that, like, does the Kingdom Hearts... doesn't have to be Kingdom Hearts level, like, that much platforming, but let my character get off the ground. all of these sequences have these guys flinging through the air in some ridiculous manner. But at the moment the battle screen goes and goes away, gravity just like hits them hard, and they're like, can't jump.
Titus had some cool.
Yeah, he's an acrobatic character.
Yeah, overdrives there.
Yeah.
No, so yeah, like I said, my erection just gets ever harder. Like, if you've seen a time lapse from the time we started this podcast, it would have been flaccid, and then now it would be like, mid-height.
You got a chub going?
Yeah, half chub. Like, you would never notice it in real time, but like, if you time lapsed it, it would just be like, slowly, you'd be like, oh, there is
It's like watching one of those plants burst out of the ground and grow really slow.
Yeah, exactly. Photosynthesis.
Basking in the light of the Final Fantasy 15.
Oh, yeah. Just give me more news. Yeah, so January 31st, we're going to get a little bit more, and then after that, we're going to get the release date.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, that's right. We have to wait until March for the release date.
Yes.
Which means it's going to come out in the fall.
Yeah, because it's probably not going to be like June, if they're announcing in March, right?
March, April, May, June. Oh, good to June.
Yeah, I think June. Good June, July.
Yeah. Considering how much event they're putting behind this, they better get their money back fast.
Well, it's been in development for 10 years. I'm sure it's a $1 billion thing at this point.
Yeah, probably.
So next up, we're going to discuss Ubisoft's next game coming out in March, The Division,
which I dismissed originally. And
as did I. I thought it looked cool. I mean, it got debuted, I think, 2 years ago. And
yeah, they had that footage of like 4 people playing together, and they're all talking over the headset.
Oh, that was real dumb.
And they're like, "Oh, okay, I'm gonna go here," and like, "Oh, look at that guy. He's not gonna see us." And I'm like, there is nothing but horrible hate speech going to pour from this game. If you have 4 random people getting together,
their commercials, like, scripted dialogue was like not representational of how online gaming is at all.
No,
absolutely.
And like, imagine doing a stealth game where one person just steps out and doesn't notice the guy behind him, and where it makes everyone, that guy is going to get nothing but the most horrendous, vile language ever spewed at him.
Very true.
So like, I was looking at the game going like, I don't need to subject myself to that hell. I'm not going to play this, but it actually looks really cool.
It does look very cool.
The new trailer made it look really cool.
I like that there are numbers popping up from these characters.
I love the fact that it's actually impacting.
So the numbers popping up is A, visual feedback, which I love. And B, I just like seeing those numbers rise. When you know you're doing...
So like Destiny, when you shot that gun, and the bullets were pretty clear to see where they flew, but like one of the best ones was the Thorn, right? Mm-hmm. And when you shot that bullet would fly off when it hit in the head, and you got that yellow number that fly up. And you just knew, like, saw the character fly by the screen, you're like, boom, and you got them in the head, and you're like, yes! And then you just knew that little dot would kill them as you saw the numbers tick off their head as they ran, tick, 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 and you're like, yes! Like, it was a great visual cue to, like, what you were doing. And as an example of one that doesn't do that, and the game I'm actually excited for is Overwatch by Blizzard. But, like, I've watched the gameplay demos, and I can never tell when anyone's hitting anything. It looks like they're just spraying into nowhere. It doesn't look like anyone in that game is actually aiming.
No.
Because I can't tell when anything impacts someone.
And I know you're not a huge fan of this series, but Gears of War is one of the better games at visual feedback that you're actually hitting them.
Yeah.
Because it's these big, cartoony, almost like sized blood spurts coming out of them, so you can tell that you're actually
Yeah, but it's another one. Like, as long as there was some sort of form of impact. But, like, Overwatch has, like, almost none. Even if there is any, I've never really seen it. It's just, like, chaos of bullets flying in a direction. And then suddenly the announcement that you've done 95% of the damage to the guy pops up at the bottom, and you're like,
I guess surprising. I'm doing something right.
Yeah, and most of the people are like, they do that. Like, they'll see the thing, they'll do stuff, and they're like, oh, okay. And then they'll see, because someone else got that last 5% that you didn't kill, and they're like, ha, 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 I got him. And I'm like, you don't even know what you did.
No, but you fucked someone else over. That's all you need to know. So the Division looks very cool. It's going to be like a loot-based game where you can go into these dark zones, and that's going to be the online segment where I guess you're battling another team to get to, like, I don't know if it's a chest or, whatever it is going to be in that post-apocalyptic world.
Yeah.
Whatever sort of loot you're going to get there. It looks really cool. I'm actually pretty stoked about it now. And it's coming out in March.
Yeah.
Fine. Like, that's cool. And they actually said there are going to be no microtransactions in this game. There's not going to be any... You can't skip past levels. There's not even going to be, like, skins, nothing cosmetic. They just said straight up... This is surprising for an Ubisoft game, too. You think they're going to, like, nickel and dime you with some sort of...
I think it's a really smart idea on an Ubisoft, so they've run into a lot of slack recently for what they've been developing, right? And also they have, which I think is our next piece of news, is the stupidity they're trying to do with... the Square Enix.
Yeah.
With Hitman, right? Like, the weird recall, and then they're spacing it out and making you pay 15 times or some shit. Like, this is shit that studios have been doing over and over again. They're like, there's no money, but you're going to pay $2,000 a year in transactions of other shit, and people are getting really tired of it. So Ubisoft being damaged in their image lately from producing bad games, bad patches, really buggy games. Like almost every game from Ubisoft has just been filled with bugs. I mean, it's a dorkly bit about, like, we're now owned by Ubisoft, and then they come up with their faces inverted. Like, it's just like it's a joke now about how bad the quality of their games are. So I think doing something like this, where they're going to release a game which
might be an act of goodwill, type
looks
thing.
Like it's going to be a good game, because I mean, Watch Dogs looked like a killer ass game, and that was a horrible piece of garbage.
Harsh. It
was horrible. And one of my best friends worked on that game.
Ooh.
Like at the studio, and was like, I'm working on Watch Dogs. I'm like, you're so cool. And they came out, and I'm like, we're not talking for a while. Anyways, shout out to Jared. Very good job. He did the UI, so it's like,
oh, okay.
He didn't do any of the it's fine. He didn't do anything that impacted my gameplay. The UI was fine in that game. Like, I think they're trying to repair some of that image. So this game has to be really good. I really hope it is. A lot of people are saying it's like Destiny done right.
Yep. And I've just started hearing that recently, because I didn't even think it was going to be that. Because they've been continually talking about how, it's like, don't worry, there's a solo mode 2, and all this stuff. But a bunch of people just played it, and they said, like, this is Destiny done right. Like, which is very exciting, because, Destiny's a great game. I enjoyed it a lot. But when it came out, it had a very severe lack of content. There was very few.
It still does. Like, the content's so easy to complete, and everyone's already bored.
So
expansion.
If this is going to be this huge, expansive, and like you said, it has kind of almost a Last of Us-esque vibe, right? There's no zombies or anything, but it's just like that post-apocalyptic world. I think it was on Christmas or Boxing Day. Mm-hmm. Something happened to this world, and it's just in this like perennial state of like there's just this like happy Christmas stuff going on around you, but it's just like dank thing. It's actually kind of neat.
Yeah, it's good. I think it's got some really good potential. And then considering the schedule of release time, March is the time of release, like of the start of the next launch. But it's smart too, because we're all getting a little hungry for some new content. February is going to be a dead month.
February's Firewatch.
That's
the one thing, yeah.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel better. March was going to... February looked like it was going to suck so hard.
Yeah, there's not... Yeah, right now I have only been playing, like, Nuclear Throne, basically.
I ran out of things. I can't even force myself to finish Fallout.
I'm nodding, because Fallout was very disappointing. So next up, like Mike said, Square Enix, very strange thing with Hitman. They just pulled everyone's pre-order. They just refunded everyone's money. All of a sudden.
That alone is weird.
Yeah. They said, here was the message. Thank you for pre-ordering Hitman. The publisher has notified us that the configuration of the product that you pre-ordered had changed significantly. As a result, we have withdrawn the current pre-order from PlayStation Store and will cancel all pre-orders. You will receive an email confirmation when your pre-order has been canceled. A revived pre-order for Hitman will be available on the store soon. And this is because it was going to be a larger game that they were going to add to over a period of time, and now they're going straight up episodic, where you can buy 1 month for $10 and then second month for $10 or whatever it's going to be. And then at the very end of the year, they're going to release the whole package as Hitman.
If they do it over 6 months and it adds up to the same price as what they pre-ordered before, so like you pre-ordered it for $60, and then if you paid $10 a month every month, it adds up to $60. It's fucking weird. Like, it feels like a play for money more than it feels like they were making a plan.
I almost think it's like a nice thing to do, though, because it did change so drastically the way they're gonna dole it out. Like, they're like, here's your money back in case you don't want. Like, it strikes me as almost like a nice thing to do. Like, it's very weird and odd for them to do it, but like, I think it's almost like considerate in my mind.
Well, I mean, if they didn't give the money back, I think everyone would be beyond royally pissed.
True.
And even if they didn't refund the money back, but they're like, oh, well, now it gets you 3 months of this thing. Like, it still would get everyone pissed. So refunding the money and letting everyone walk into this how they want to is a thing. I don't think the reaction from everyone is really mad about this. Like, fuck you guys.
It's more of a confused, like, oh?
Yeah, it's more like just a big question mark on, like, if you had the Earth, a question mark, like, boop, boop.
Well, what happened in some boardroom at Square Enix where this man was like, but what if, instead of the whole game, we gave them 1/6 of it? Then everyone was like, no? But what if we just did that? We have to listen to him. He's our boss. Okay. Let's chop it into 6 pieces now. Like, what do you... Like, who thought that was a great idea? Did they just want to experiment with this and maybe all of a sudden, they're going to find
Oh
that
god,
people
what if it's an experiment for Final Fantasy VII?
Oh, how dare you bring that up?
Can you imagine, though, that this is their, Final Fantasy VII's coming up episodic. Everyone's not liking the idea of Final Fantasy episodic. Let's test it out on Hitman.
Yep.
You know that's the thing.
No.
You know that's true.
That's insidious.
Oh, I solved it, and I don't like that I like the solution.
No, I refuse to believe this. It's not accurate information. Just disregard Mike for the next several minutes. He's clearly descending into madness.
Oh, if I'm right, though?
I don't like that at all.
No, I don't like that at all either. That would be bad.
Moving on, let's not talk about it. So, there's a little game back when the Xbox One first came out called Titanfall. Yeah. Made by the Infinity Ward people. The people who made Call of Duty 4 and Modern Warfare 2. Yeah. When they broke off, they went to and made Respawn. That was the developer's name. So now there's a rumor going around that their secret project is a third-person action-adventure game. It was reported because there was a job listing for a senior level designer, and it reads, "We are now recruiting designers for 2 game development projects, a new game in the Titanfall universe, as well as a new third-person action-adventure IP." It's not even a rumor, actually. I guess this is just confirmed.
No, but the thing is when you're doing recruiting like that for jobs inside of studios, as a great example, Snowden Studios here hired a bunch of people for a new IP that Snowden had, but it wasn't for an original IP. It was for Warhammer.
It was a new IP to them?
Yeah, and it was only outsourced work, right? And DSEX was another one they did that for, right? So, they get new IPs for themselves, but it's not original content. A lot of these studios, in order to fit the bill while they work on their own personal IPs, the ones that are big enough to support themselves, like EA and Ubisoft, they work on other studio content. They outsource their work in between, right? Because you'll have some of your team working on concept and post-production or pre-production at that point, and your developers aren't really in on a spot, so you outsource your developers to another company in order to make some money, right? And then you do work, and you also get your name and it's spread around, and you get some money made, etc. So that's what it could be for. So there's no guarantee that this new IP is a studio original IP, right?
Respawn's got a lot of money, I think, though. I feel like this could be their own thing.
Yeah, but considering the price of what it costs to make games these days, you have to be a big studio to make... I mean, look at all the ones that keep crashing when they're like, we're going to make this, it's going to come out, we fail.
I'm looking something up.
So so many studios have that happen. I don't know if they're big enough to say that they can support themselves through an entire game production, right? And I say that more so because they're working on a new Titanfall as well.
That's what it's at. A new game in the Titanfall universe is what they said.
Well, then there you go. That's my point. So that's their original IP that they're working on to make, and maybe the other one is just them working on another IP new to the studio. So I don't know. It all depends on what their money making things like. Making a game of any kind, you're immediately in the red by massive amounts of money. Yeah,
I feel like EA is funding this. They're not owned by it though, but they went through the EA Partners program, which is when they publish your shit. So hard to say.
Publishers would just give them a loan of money.
Yeah, that's true.
So they were on a loan, they're on debt, and they have to pay for it. So they're probably working that off, right? Covering their butts with whatever's coming up. So I don't know. I wouldn't say that it's a confirmation of a new third-party title now that I've heard the news.
Well, you just heard it, folks. Mike has no dreams, which will not translate well into the next segment, because we'll be talking about our dreams and our game franchises that we most want to come back. So right after the break, stay tuned for that.
All you do is put me down.
That's what I have to do. So welcome back to the Pens and Pixels PopCast. In this segment, we're going to be talking about our lost dreams.
Our lost dreams.
We're going to be talking
about... a little bit more vague than that, but...
We're going to be talking about a bunch of dead franchises that we'd love to see come back in gaming. So, games of yesteryear. And we both made a list of 5 that we're going to break down for you, starting now.
Those are games that, series, almost more specifically, though, as well. Not just singular one-off games that we wish there were sequels to. It's more like... These games had a whole series that kept coming. We kept getting new titles, and we were always happy to see and get more from them. And we wanted to see more, and then eventually that series just dropped off. Most of these actually just dropped off unexpectedly without having a real solid reason for return. There wasn't an end to it or anything. It was just now you get no more.
Yeah, that's true. In most of these cases, it really was that.
Yeah. So, my first one that I always really enjoyed and I would like to see more of was as a very classic, Legacy of Kain. So if anyone doesn't know what that is, that was I guess, vampire?
Yeah, he may have been. I don't know what he was.
The story was really convoluted, and it never came out in the right order, or I played it in the wrong order, because I think I played Soul Reaver first, which didn't make any sense to why there was a vampire, and then I was an undead vampire that came back to suck souls out of him, or...
Yep.
I really had no clue what's going on, and as a matter of fact, I'm really not sure what the story was till today. But the games were a hoot, and I like that word, hoot. Yeah. It's like a hoot nanny.
It was a hoot. Yeah, it was a hoot nanny. It was a hoedown.
They were a hoot nanny and a half. But they were great, and it was just in simple mechanics and simple action puzzle. There was even stealth in it before, like, they really could execute stealth properly. And they were kind of ridiculous at the same time. Like,
oh yeah, they're totally over the top.
There was one where you actually played as the vampire lord guy, and I don't even know what time setting that was. I think it was before... It
was Victorian era, wasn't it?
Before the Legacy of Kain happened or something. And we didn't have the graphics to, like, make someone walk up, grab someone, and bite in and do that. Like, that was just above what we could do with games at the time. So you just beat someone up until eventually they got on the floor. When they were on the floor, you would just take this position, and then all the blood in their body would just flow into your mouth.
Yeah, he would power suck in like this stream of blood into his fangs or something. It was sick. I remember thinking that was so cool at the time. And you're right. Looking back, it probably totally was a technical limitation.
Yeah.
But it was so cool that you could just like drain these bodies, just like like you're just drinking these people down. Like it was great.
And then the Soul Reaver series that came off of that was based on like another vampire that died and then got brought back to kill that vampire. And you get like soul powers as an undead and all that, and there's a sword, and there was just so much about that series that was iconic, and there's a lot of imagery about it that's iconic, and the gameplay was always like a big hook for our people. It's just a series I'd like to see come back, and done with today, it would be an amazing game. Back then, it actually wasn't a great game because the technology could not meet up to the vision, and if this came back today, it would totally kick ass. Plus, we haven't had a really good, solid vampire game where you're going to play as a vampire and you're going to go like hunt around in an open world. Like an open world game as a vampire, and like you're running along rooftops and you're like going to go hunt down some victims, wait for them to get off into an alley, swing down and like actually suck their blood and then run away. Like,
yeah, hunting them.
Fucking down with a game like that.
That would be cool. Interesting factoid. That game, The Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, that was done by Amy Hennig.
Fill in.
Pregnant pause. The woman who went on to direct Uncharted 2.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting.
Oh.
I just said it was an interesting fact. I didn't say we'd have an in-depth discussion about it. But yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
Need to see her legacy there.
There's really not much to say about it other than this fact that I think a lot of people remember this game. A lot of people know about this game. A lot of people have brought it up before, and a lot of people loved it. And it wasn't for anything in particular. It was just that the elements that were in it were great. So, like, everyone wanted it. And then it just... I think maybe they did finish the story of it, or I don't know. But whatever it was, it disappeared. And, yeah, I want to see you come back, Legacy of Kain.
Oh, that's sweet. On my list, longer forgotten franchise, the last entry was only seen on the original Xbox, and that's Dino Crisis.
You would.
So, Mike's been looking at me with disdain all night because he can't believe that I want Dino Crisis to come back. But the fact is, Dino Crisis were very good games. The first one was almost like it was a reskin Resident Evil. It played almost the exact same. You know, it had tank controls, and it went for the scary like jump scare moments, but with raptors instead of zombies. Yeah. And there's a giant T-Rex like looming in the background type thing. You always had to be wary about. Mm-hmm. But that game had a cool atmosphere, and it was a very contained thing. But really where the series picked up was Dino Crisis 2. Did you ever play either of these?
I, watched other people play them.
Dino Crisis 2 was very interesting. It took a more action-oriented thing. Mm-hmm. And you're playing as this guy, and you actually got warped back in time.
Yeah.
Into a different portal or dimension or something. Dinosaurs are everywhere. You could upgrade your guns, much like how they went on to do in Resident Evil 4 and 5, where you could upgrade your weapons. And it was a really cool system at the time. You know, it was far ahead of its time with what it was doing, because you would get credits for killing different types of dinosaurs, harder one would gain more credits and all that stuff, and you could upgrade your weapons. All very cool. and then they ruined the series when they went into space. Now, not often I would tell you this, that things get ruined by going into space, because as we all know, Jason X was made better by going into space. You put Jason Voorhees in space and it becomes a good movie. The 4 movies before that...
Whoa.
What?
You sat down to watch Jason X, and then, we're like, this is amazing.
Jason X, Mike Kent, is amazing. A lot of the Friday the 13th movies now do not hold up. They're not very good. Jason X is great.
Wasn't there some sort of martial arts fight in that between an android and Jason?
Yes, there was, Mike. And it was great. There's a scene in that where after Jason gets transformed where he gets put into a virtual reality simulation, and he's back at Camp Crystal Lake. It's he's in the woods again, and he sees these 2 co-ed girls all over each other and stuff. And then it cuts away for a minute, and it cuts back to them, it cuts some out of the scene, and cuts back to him, and he's beating one in a sleeping bag with the other one in a sleeping bag, and it's just going on. He's just beating them with each other, and I was like, this is fantastic! Great movie. A lot of cool kills, he kills someone with an instant freeze, he dips their face into, whatever. I don't know how he would have the intellect to know what it is.
How did he turn into a cyborg in that?
There's, some techno-organic virus on the ship or something.
Why was it there?
Because it's a stupid movie, Mike. The beginning of the movie is so great, too, because they, they have him cryogenically frozen because they're trying to study him. He keeps coming back. He's fucking invincible. How do we harness this power? Jason X is a really good movie. Anyways, the Dino Crisis was ruined by going to space. It was made terrible. Honestly, not so much by the concept of going to space. It was just the controls were bad.
Do you ever remember with the 90s games when they started doing the sequels? The sequels started getting outlandish. All of the developers lost their minds because I'm not going to bring up all the titles with it because we'd be at it forever, but there'd be all these games where you get the first one and you're like, that was really cool. What an in-depth story. What an interesting idea. A second one comes out and you're like, yeah, okay. And then by the third or fourth, suddenly they're on planet Zorbulax and they're fighting rabbits and you're like, what does this have to do with dinosaurs? All the games in the 90s just eventually just went insane.
Yeah, I don't really know why they chose to do that. And it was an Xbox exclusive at the time, too, which was really an odd choice, but, Microsoft clearly paid Microsoft to be like, hey, we want this exclusively on our console, and they fucked it up real bad, and that killed the series. It just straight up isn't anything anymore. But there's a really popular game now called Ark Survival. Yeah. It's about dinosaurs, right? Dinosaurs are on the rise again, with Far Cry Primal coming out, and I think there's a Turok.
Well, Primal's going to be no dinos. It's going to
oh, that's right. That's right.
It's after, it's not Cretaceous, whatever that period is. Paleolithic.
Yeah, you're right.
So it's no dinos, it's all, right before us kind of thing.
Nah, that's right. Yeah. Way lamer. Yeah, mammals are not as cool.
That's why I was saying I'm worried that it'll just be tigers, bears, and lions, right? Because, you really don't have anything else to be, all that threatening.
You know what another cool series was that went to space? Leprechaun.
Leprechaun went to space? Why am I knowing these things?
Leprechaun, well, the first one had Jennifer Aniston, so you should know it. It was, one of her first roles.
Really?
Yeah.
As a kid?
No, she was, teenage.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Leprechaun isn't that old.
The only Leprechaun I've ever seen is one where I think he goes to Vegas and then he blows that girl up by making her boobs expand until they explode.
Oh, is that Leprechaun Back to the Hood?
No.
No?
I don't think so. I got as a joke gift on VHS, just to give how old I am. He goes in and one of these girls is this girl that likes plastic surgery too much, and then he goes like this, or gestures the shape of breasts. And suddenly her boobs keep expanding until they explode. That's the only scene I remember.
Huh. That's 3. It's not 1.
I'm just I love that I can bring this up because there's this Rolodex of bad things going through your head.
Yeah, I'm just trying to remember.
The list, if it was listed out, everyone would just be like, oh.
A couple years back, I went through a bunch of all the old horror movies that I hadn't seen in a long time. I watched all of, Nightmare on Elm Street. I watched all of Leprechaun. I watched Friday the 13th movies. I watched Halloween,
It's actually not a bad list. There's a bunch of good movies in there.
Well, the thing is, most of those franchises have at least one good one. you know? Freddy, the Freddy series has at least 3 good ones. The first one's good, third one's real good, and New Nightmare's pretty good. Remake's bad. Remake's real bad. Mm-hmm. Friday the 13th, first one's real good, second one's real good. 3, 4, 5, 6 probably suck. Mm-hmm. I don't remember this thing. They all get muddled in my mind because they all feel so similar to me. Jason X is great. And the Friday the 13th remake wasn't bad, actually. I really enjoyed it. Did you see that one?
No.
Oh, man.
I saw the Freddy vs. Jason. That was bad. Well,
it absolutely was not. It was a lot. That movie was a lot of fun. I think finally getting them to cross over and the concept they had going on there was very interesting. Because it was like Freddy had been dead in everyone's mind for a long time, and then by having Jason resurrected, and that started getting everyone to think that, oh, fuck, Freddy's back. Like, and then he started coming to public consciousness again, and that brings him back, and then, because he needs people thinking about him to be back, right? Yeah. It was a really cool concept. Like, that's a great way to get their universes to cross over rather than anything else, you know?
Well, how would you convince Jason that he exists in the first place to, like, survive in his brain?
What?
But, like, that's the thing, right? He was manipulating Jason, right? The whole time in that movie?
Yes.
Yeah. And that's how he, like, survived, was through Jason.
Well, Jason was killing people, and that was getting everyone thought it was Freddy again. So that would get the public consciousness to think that it was Freddy.
Why would they think it, like...
Because it was in the Nightmare on Elm Street world, right? So they thought it was Freddy because people of that neighborhood feared Freddy. There were all these kids in that, I don't know if you remember, but they were in this, like, containment unit where they had to be kept awake all the time. So they wouldn't go back to sleep, so Freddy wouldn't be there anymore. So no one could dream about him. And then everyone else in the outside world was just normal, so they didn't know. Anyone who knew about him was in there.
Oh, guess this is horror film stuff that I don't know.
It's a good movie. It's a lot of fun. I think if you watch that again, you would laugh at least. Like, it's not like scary or anything. No, it's not supposed to be, right? And they have a cool fight at the end, and like it's neat. I wouldn't, it's not going to win a fucking Oscar, Mike. Like, it's not The Revenant. It's not.
No, I'm not getting The Revenant won't win.
But you're right. It's not like a Conjuring or something. It's not like a good movie, but I think it's a fun experience. You know, that's all I'm really looking for.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, that got real off topic. What's your second game you want to see come back from the dead?
The second game that I want to see come back from the dead is Power Stone. Fucking love Power Stone.
Oh yeah, Power Stone's a lot of fun.
First time I ever played Power Stone, before I even tell you what it is.
Well, let's give them a little context.
Yeah.
It was almost like, I don't know.
It was one of the first 3D fighting games that I can remember having a really good time in.
It was like Smash Brothers, but you could actually, instead of being on a 2D plane all the time, you're on like a 3D plane.
It was a full proper 3D plane, and you'd be in this environment, and everything in the environment was yours to use. Like, if you got flung into a corner and there's a pipe there, you'd actually swing around the pipe and fling yourself back at them. If you were running away and there was a table in front of you, you'd actually do like a parkour jump and throw it between your legs and slide it towards them and trip them before they got to you. And basically the goal of every fight was to pick up one or all three of the Power Stones before you got them kicked out of you, basically. With the few attacks you got, and then you'd be able to power up into your Power Stone form, which pretty much said you won. That was the first one. The second one was a bit more complex than that.
I never played Power Stone 2.
And it actually wasn't quite as good because the levels were all like moving and shit all the time, so you weren't actually concentrating on the fights, which was the best part of Power Stone. But the characters were these over-top anime characters. One of them actually went Super Saiyan and literally just did the...
Yeah, he did actually. That's right.
Yeah. One of them turned into like a robot and fired missiles, and then there was like always, as per any anime game, was like the creepy guy with the scissor fingers. Like... It was just like the quintessential, but the thing I remember about that game was I had never seen it before, and back in the day when they used to have real arcades in theaters, it popped up in the most random theater. I can't remember what it was, and I was so excited to see the movie I was going to go see, and then, sorry, I just looked like Cell's anus.
We have Dragon Ball Z abridged on in the background, as is per usual with the PopCast. It's just nice to have a little bit.
I was about to suck him in, and all it looked like was I look up, and all I see is like what looks like an anus. I'm like, what the hell? Where was I? That totally knocked me off.
You were talking about going to the movies?
Right. It was at some little tiny theater in Ottawa I hadn't been to in a really long time, and I was so excited to see the movie I was going to go see, and I ended up ditching my friends by pretending to go up the stairs and then having to go back to the bathroom and going back to the game and playing it through the whole film.
Mm-hmm.
I just didn't stop. I didn't stop playing that game, and I was so hooked. And it was because one, it was a first of its kind for sure. You couldn't get it on console. It was only in arcades at the time. And then the interaction to it too. It's like it was a first of its kind, and even till today, like I have a friend who has a whole basement filled with old arcade machines, and it has all these old games on it. And he had Power Stone, he even has Virtua on, which was like so good. He actually has a full Virtua on station with the 2 joysticks and everything. Anyways, so I got to go and play it again, and it still even held up, you know, like running around the room and throwing like a chair at someone, and then grabbing a bomb and throwing it down, running over and flying, kicking him in the head, grabbing a Power Stone, and then like jumping backwards, and like so good. No, and they don't
really have any games like that out now, you know?
You know, Smash Brothers kind of cornered that market in that, like, kind of
it wasn't like, but it was like Smash Brothers, but it was different enough that it wasn't just, remember that one that Sony did a couple years back, Sony PlayStation All-Stars or whatever?
Yeah.
That was straight up just Smash Brothers, but worse.
Yeah.
Like, Power Stone is different. It's a different gameplay feel, you know? It's 3D moving space, and, like, it is different.
So what happened with that game, though, is that it went to the Dreamcast.
Yeah.
And that's what happened to most of those games. So, like, Shenmue is the only one coming out of that purgatory, but almost all Dreamcast games are stuck in the Dreamcast.
Skies of Arcadia. People begging for Skies of Arcadia.
Another one.
Still, I see that name pop up every now and then, and I'm like...
Remember Knights? The one where you're
fight.
playing the flying Dream Jester, Purple Jester?
Oh, yeah. They made a sequel to that on the Wii.
Did they?
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
It was received mediocrely.
Okay.
Mediocre!
Oh. But there were lots of other games that didn't come out of the Dreamcast purgatory, so it's a little hard to like pull those games out, and Power Stone was one of them. And it just kind of fell to the wayside.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a ton of fun, and if that game had continued on and expanded, I think it would have actually added another level to the fighting game genre, which I personally find the reason why I dropped out of it is that 2D fighting game style, ton of fun. But I find it as a party thing. Like, I have more fun playing those games when I play it with a friend. Right?
Oh, absolutely.
I'm looking forward to doing Street Fighter when I play it with Cal, and I'm not going to go online and play
like, you're not even going to buy the game.
No.
But whereas, like, yeah, but with me, I have fun fighting the CPU in Street Fighter. I have fun going into the training modes and trying to complete different challenges.
Yeah, it's a different appeal. But it created more mass appeal, games like Power Stone. And there were other games on the Dreamcast that were just like that. Actually, some of them based on animes and stuff. That were these different versions of fighting games. I forget what it was, but one based on an old anime that was about these guys with psychic powers. And they flew around and had psychic powers. So in this game, you were actually flying around. It was still in a kind of like a 2D aspect, but also with a bit of 3D. And it had a really, really different battle system that took me like several gameplays to even get a grasp on how to make it function. And at the time, they were really experimenting with this kind of fighting game mechanics. What's the one about the samurais where like it was like realistic samurai fighting in PlayStation?
Samurai Showdown?
Maybe that's it. I forget.
There's no one I can think of.
It was a long time ago. It was original PlayStation 1 release. But we were really playing with those things, and I think if the games like Power Stone and those came out and had continued to be massaged, we would see a more variation in the genre of fighting games. But as of now, it's been so narrowly niched down into being the 2D side-scrolling fighting games, right? Mortal Kombat, Street Fighter, Guilty Gear, and that's pretty much really it for your standout fighting games. I think that like it was a whole lost industry, and it was just such an addictive game.
There are like 4-player games now that you see. There's one in particular where it's like 4 different colored guys, but it's all just trying to knock each other off space. It's not fighting like Power Stone was, but that
but
is
even Bomberman. Like, remember Bomberman?
Oh, I love Bomberman.
I fucking had the most amazing time playing Bomberman with all 4 people, and even the 64 version was a shit ton of fun in multiplayer.
My best memory of Bomberman is I grew up. My dad worked at a hotel, so he would like during the day when I was young, and my parents didn't want a babysitter. He would just bring me to the hotel, and he would just stick me in a room, like basically, right?
Yeah.
And he'd be just like, have fun, like I had a TV or whatever I could draw.
Yeah, my dad did that too. He works as a photographer. He stuck me in the black room in the back with the TV.
Yeah. So I had my Game Boy, and I had Bomberman versus Wario on there. And it was just a little game. It was just Bomberman. It had Wario sprite. You could play through it. And I just played against CPU the entire time, and I fucking loved that game.
Yeah.
Always fun.
Yeah. And I just think that those cooperative and or fun battle games like that are getting a little bit lost to people trying to replicate successes based off of others. Like, the mobile market could go so many places. MOBA is basically based around chess and or RTS strategies, right? So you should have so many different forms of strategy, but instead, what do we get? Blizzard rips off League of Legends almost to a T, and I know it's different and it has all sorts of different mechanics, blah, blah, blah. But it's still essentially the same thing.
It's a MOBA. Same genre, so it's going to be
And there's
a
new one coming out now. It's all the same thing. Like, team of 4 on one side, team of 4 on the other, or team of 5 on one side. It doesn't matter, right? You could do so much more with these games, and you're not, because everyone's trying to mimic Riot's success. It's the same thing with fighting games. That genre and that generation at that time when we were exploring multiplayer combat games against each other, I think it just kind of got lost. And I think that's the key to why we even lost that whole, sitting around a TV and playing together.
Well, we also lost that because games less and less featured, Even like co-op now, it's like if you want co-op, you got to be on different TVs. Instead, you can't just.
But I'd be totally fine with doing it online. It doesn't have to be online and just be in person. It's more like those games don't really. They're not pushing genres, I find, and that's why, as a discussion actually we're going to have later, a little bit at the end, is the whole online thing, and every game pushing for all this online content. They're pushing repetitive online content. Everyone's like, "Oh, we should go back to like single player campaigns." Yes, I actually agree, more single player campaigns, but we also still need more innovative means to have online content.
I agree.
So what's your second game?
My second game that I want to see revived is Silent Hill. So my next game that I want to see revived is Silent Hill. Now, Silent Hill, it's not technically dead, but we all know what happened with PT and Silent Hills. How it got canceled under, Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro. And Mike thinks that it's still under development, I guess.
Not under development. No. I think it did actually go through issues, and it did lose its money, and it lost its creative license and everything. And
and its creative directors.
Yeah, I think it did go through an issue with a lot of that, but I don't think either of those men let that game die, and I don't think either of them planned to let it die with the reaction it got, and the amount of work and energy and how cleverly so much of it came out, and PT being a kind of thing that has never been done before. There's just too much construction behind it to not be a really fucking genius ad campaign. I think they're going to stretch this the fuck out, and they're going to make us hold on forever, and we're all going to expect it's going to be dead. And then it's just going to be like, oh, guess what? We decided this year we were going to work on it, and then they're going to be like.
So what you're saying is you think that Kojima's productions, now it's all started up, you think that game, what he's going to be working on now, is going to be. Yeah. What Silent Hills was going to be. And
I think that Guillermo's going to be involved in everything. I think it's going to totally happen. The only thing, I know, all of the legitimate and all of the word and the news and stuff out there, but we spend so much time speculating about all this stuff. But could you honestly tell me that with everything around PT and Silent Hills, that you think that any company would give up on the money they would make off of this?
Yes. And for once, I'll be the voice of cynicism here instead of Mike. And this is the series I want to see come back. I think that fucking thing was dead in the water. I think Kojima's next game is going to be something that's not that. I think all that work is gone, and I don't think that anything is going to come of it. I wish it would, but I really, really do not believe.
We just spent the entire first half of this podcast correcting ourselves from, it got canceled. No, it didn't.
Yeah.
That's all this industry is. They do that in order to create hype and create interest and be like, oh, we're going to get it, right? Are you going to get it? And then it releases, and you're like, oh, it came out, thank God.
No,
Persona, Final Fantasy 15, they're all games that have followed this exact same method.
They never, but the companies behind them never fired their lead creative and then...
Oh, yeah, sure, there's plenty of stories of that happening with
other games. No. Yes. I do not think that what they were working on is going to come out, ever. Mm-hmm. I really, really can't see it coming out. That's... I would love to be wrong, but that's the thing. # Cal called it will never come out. That is, I'll put a lifetime bet that will never come out.
I guarantee you they'll be eating that.
I think that they might work together again, but I do not think it will be anything.
I think they're going to release games either together or separately before we see it, so making us think that they're gonna detract from it, going no, what we were working on wasn't that. No one's going to be like, why weren't you working on Silent Hills? And they're just going to keep playing it up, and then. Bammo.
Well, Mike's the optimist for this segment, apparently. Let's talk a little bit about Silent Hill. Let's talk a little bit about how special that series was. Used to be.
It got shitty after a while, though.
Well, the original Silent Hill is very interesting, because if you look in the history of it, it was Japanese people trying to do Western horror. Yeah. And what came out of it was something really special, and it wasn't exactly Japanese horror, and it wasn't exactly what you would consider Western horror. It was this almost like a brand new style of horror, the way it got under your skin. Mm-hmm. It wasn't over the top. Everything was very subtle.
Atmospheric.
Oh yeah, and
I remember first turning on Silent Hills 2. Doesn't matter. I hadn't played any of Silent Hills before, and we were just terrified about the first few minutes. And then you start off in the town and you're in the mist, and you have that radio, and the radio starts clicking, right? Crackling whenever a monster gets near. And, you'd just be walking, but you'd walk slowly. So the game would take forever to get through, because you're just like, next step. you're like, fuck.
Well, what you had, you had like a shitty piece of wood or something, right? You had something to defend them off. You could beat them off and stuff, but you weren't like
you're gonna beat off the monsters in Silent Hill.
Those nurses are pretty sexy.
There's some really bad porn in there.
But you could beat them off, and you could kill them. But shut up, Mike. But you couldn't. You fucking couldn't. God damn it! You ruined my point.
He's just like giving monsters hand jobs.
Don't
kill me.
Some of the nurses looked like they had like vagina faces, which I'm sure was no mistake.
Ew.
Well, yeah. So what was cool about that game is it's that sweet spot in horror games that I like, that you don't feel overpowered, but you're not also completely defenseless.
Yeah.
You had either a very limited amount of ammo when you did find guns.
Yeah.
You had things that would like break. You had things that wouldn't, stay. Like, I don't know how this fucking like crowbar is gonna break, but like it would break or whatever. And like that was all very cool. I enjoyed that level of tension where I can get them away from me, and I can kill them if I really try. But I might need this piece of wood later because there might be something harder than this armless shitty thing. Like right.
The babies and the fact that you can't even swing down half the time.
No, and so then Silent Hill 2 had a great story. I don't know if you remember that one.
I can't remember.
James Sunderland is searching for his wife, and he gets this letter, but his wife's been dead for years, but he gets this letter, and he has to go to Silent Hills to meet her and all this stuff. And every monster in that game is part of his subconscious, and it's and if you look in the monster designs, every one of them represents something about his relationship with his wife. And there's one that's straight up just like a bed with legs almost, and it's just like, all right, and it's covered in like skin and all this shit. But spoiler warning, if you don't want to hear this for Silent Hills, close your ears for the next minute.
He's the one who killed his wife.
He's the one. He killed his own wife. He suffocated her because she was dying or something. And he suffocated her with a pillow or something. And like he's confronted with his whole guilt, and that's where Pyramid Head comes from. Is the second one. That's personification chasing him, his own guilt like coming across. And there's a whole scene where Pyramid Head rapes another a mannequin thing and stuff like that. It's a super weird scene because he's like watching from a closet and all this stuff, which has implications that he might have like. Forced himself upon his wife when she was like useless, in bed, like sick or whatever, and dying. It's just real interesting. It's a cool, horrific story. It's something that like you never saw in games of that, especially at that time. Yeah. Game stories are getting better and better as we evolve the medium, but by and large, a lot of game stories are shitty.
No, it was definitely a deeper exploration, and like that whole like psychosis thing was, like as a game as art, like kind of perspective. Yeah, it was definitely one of the first of its kind.
There's a really cool moment in that game that I'll always remember is when it's near the end and you need to get to another building, a hotel, and it's across the lake, and you get in this rowboat, and it's just that the lake is drenched in fog, right? You can't see an inch in front of you, and you're just rowing and rowing. It's super silent. Nothing's going on, and the tension's just rising up. You're like, something's gonna fucking pop out of the water. Something's gonna dive in and like swoop out of the sky and get you. Nothing happens the entire time. It's just this really calm rowboat. He's rowing, just rowing. I'll remember that the rest of my life. It was terrifying.
And that was the parts about Silent Hill I always liked the most, and some of the good Silent Hills were that it wasn't even so much the horrible visuals and the scares or anything like that, or the monsters. It was like just a crackling radio and a dead fog in the middle of a street.
Because it gave you, the crackling radio was brilliant because it let you know there's something here and you can't see it. Yeah. And it could be.
And sometimes you wouldn't even ever run into it. It could be just far enough away that it would never even get anywhere near you.
Exactly.
So you're just like playing this game of trying to keep the crackling as low as possible, and you can't see what's going on. You don't know what's out there. Right, and it's not always the same thing. It wasn't always a bat creature or something. There was something else somewhere around, and you're like,
No.
So like the atmosphere was built without ever initiating a gameplay mechanic, which that was the brilliance of it.
No, yeah. Super, super great game. Like one of the greatest games of all time, in my opinion, Silent Hill 2.
Yeah.
Silent Hill 3 was also great. It was a little more of the same. It had really good visuals for the time, especially.
Yeah, it did.
Cool monster designs. That one doesn't stand out in my mind as much. I do like that game, but I only ever played it once because it's super rare now, apparently. And then Silent Hill 4, which is when the series started to take a little bit of a downturn. It was still the team behind it, but what happened was Team Silent was going to be working on another game, another horror game, but it wasn't going to be a Silent Hill game. And then Konami at the time, I guess, was like, "Well, just make a Silent Hill." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, okay." and they just slap the Silent Hill skin on it and stuff.
Yeah.
And there is a kind of a cool story going on in that, but that game involved a lot of backtracking, which I didn't like, and all this stuff. But it was an interesting game anyways, because you kept returning to this room. This room was your safe point, and you would you stay in your room and stuff, and you could light these candles and keep it safe. Yeah. And there's a hole in the wall that you kept going out. That's how you get Silent Hill. A hole would appear in the wall.
Yeah, I remember.
But every time you came back to the room, it was a little more tainted, and a little more tainted, and a little more tainted, and your safe space eventually started becoming the dangerous space that you couldn't return to anymore. Yeah, it was very cool. And like you were in this room, and like you could peer into your neighbor's room because there was a crack in the wall and stuff, and it was really cool. But then Silent Hill stayed dormant after a little while. I think Team Silent disbanded completely. Like they're not a team anymore. They haven't been for a long time since the PS2 era. And then they came out with Silent Hill 5. Technically, I think it was Homecoming.
No,
that wasn't good.
They won on PSP too after that.
The PSP one was okay, actually. It was Climax Studios, and it was decent actually, but it was very much just Silent Hill 1 again. Yeah. They didn't really do anything that interesting with it. You could switch between. That was the first time you could switch between the real world and Silent Hill, just by like tapping something on the wall. Like you'd hit something and it would turn into the creepy world, and you go back to the real world and you solve puzzles that way. Yeah. Kind of interesting, but like not really what I wanted from it. No. Then Homecoming came out, and that was a different developer entirely, and it was a Western developer, and it showed because they just started using Pyramid Head again, which I didn't like because Pyramid Head was a representation of James Sunderland's guilt. Yeah, it was not a representation of this guy's guilt. In this other game, right? It wasn't whatever he did.
Or a representation of just Silent Hills in general. Like
that's the thing. So Pyramid Head almost became this like mascot of like Silent Hill after that because he is a very iconic design.
He is now.
No, that's the thing. But like, yeah, the thing is that like he represented a thing in that character's life, and he should have only been in that game, in my opinion.
And he was in the movie and in the movies. Sorry.
Yeah. Oh, the second movie's terrible.
Oh god.
First movie's not bad.
I like the first movie.
It's I think it's the best video game movie we ever got.
Yeah.
It's fairly like representational of the game, you know, like it's
yeah, no, it fit. I mean, they even tried to get it back into a bit of the original Silent Hill 2 mentality, right? Like it was based on this girl who was tormented and burned as a witch, so she burned the whole town, right? And she's been trapping them, but they're only surviving just by their faith, their blind faith, right?
Yeah.
And
there's a siren and noise and stuff.
All of the imagery and everything that keeps appearing is all portions of Alyssa, like the nurses that were taking care of her, and those were the nurses. And
that movie gets a lot of hate, and like I don't understand why. Yeah, I think it was really good. Yeah. The one thing that always weirds me out, or not weirds me out, but it's just is a strange offside of that movie is that when they're making it, they were going to base it off Silent Hill 1 completely, right? And they were going to have a guy chasing his daughter going to Silent Hill, which is what the first one was about. Mm-hmm. And instead they said, no one's going to believe that a father would do this for their daughter. We need to make it a mother. And I was like, oh, okay. And then they had Sean Bean in that movie, and he was looking for his wife and daughter the entire time. You could cut all his scenes out of that movie and it wouldn't make a fucking difference. Mm-hmm. It would be a better movie. Like, it just didn't matter what was going on with him. Like, it's just a weird thing. Like, I don't know.
I mean, I can get the selling point behind a mother chasing after a kid because the mother-child relationship is, I guess you could almost put it as stronger. I wouldn't say there's an argument to be made against that, obviously.
No, but something, this is different, but like The Grey. Have you seen The Grey? Or not The Grey, The Road.
Nope.
Have you seen The Road? Okay, never mind. That's father-son, and that was really good.
Oh, wait, yes.
Yeah, The Road. Really good post-apocalyptic movie where he's taking care of his son and stuff because, he's going very far for his son. Anyways, that was a little history of Silent Hill, but those games are brilliant. Most of them.
That's the thing, there were so many of them too. I think there were like 7 by the time they finished, right?
Yeah, so the Room was 4, there's a PSP one, and then there was
there's another one after
Homecoming. There was one on the Wii, which was actually really good. But it was very odd. You only had a flashlight to defend yourself. It was kind of going to that defenseless mode type thing.
Which is just going right into a bunch of games that already exist as well.
Yes, that's true.
So, yeah, no. I mean, the game...
But it's just gotten so, like, it just doesn't seem like Silent Hill anymore. And that's why when PT came out and it was real to be Silent Hills, it seemed like this is a return to form. Yeah. This is back to Silent Hill 2, 3 era,
100%.
Where it was really good.
Yeah.
And then our dream blew up in our face.
And I think it's just a ploy.
Mike's a piece of shit. Moving on.
I think you said that in every podcast now. You piece of shit or you are a piece of shit. That's... so much love. Like my best friend goes, piece of shit. You're a piece of shit.
We record at my house. I can tell you exactly what you are. That's how it works. So what's the second game on your list?
Third game.
Third game, sorry.
The third game for me is The Chrono series.
Ah,
yeah.
yes.
Now that's a series near and dear to many people's hearts. Chrono Trigger on its own stands still today as one of the greatest games. You know what? It rates easily in the top 5 of every top 5 list ever made. You know, I don't think that there's almost any top 5 list or even top 10 list games or anything of all time that Chrono Trigger doesn't appear on.
You're not wrong.
I don't want to even get into it because Chrono Trigger has so much to talk about with being such an amazing game. We could do a whole like Breath of Fire segment for Chrono Trigger on its own. But it did also spawn one sequel, which was Chrono Cross. The only one? Yeah, only one. Chrono Cross I found was an inferior game to the Chrono Trigger, but I mean it was going up to some pretty high freaking standards. But still was an excellent game, and even did some great homages, even brought in back the main boss from the last game, and has some tie-ins and some great time loopies and some things to think about. It was a little bit too, not 2001, I'm trying to think of some like time travel movies that were really good.
Jason X.
Oh. Maybe The Machinist is a better... Or Machinist? Is that the one where he keeps trapping himself in the machine with Christian Bale?
It's the one where he's real skinny?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good time travel one. But, you know, still excellent games. And childhood cherished memories to all of them. Mostly falling on Chrono Trigger, though, I gotta say.
Chrono Trigger's real cool. Tell me what you think of this. This is what honestly, when Square Enix was faltering for a while... when they're not releasing good Final Fantasy games, like anything in between 11 and 14, let's say, where I didn't really like them. I really wanted them to just do a smaller budget game and maybe go back and do a Final Fantasy that was 2D, maybe like Final Fantasy 6 again. Make a smaller budget game. What would you think if they brought Chrono Trigger back in that way? Like they did a Chrono Trigger 2, and it was like SNES style again. Or would you want like a new big?
No, actually, you know, the thing is they've done that for other games already, and they've tried to do it for other games. Period. Like they've had, I can't even think of the names of them, but it doesn't matter. They've had other classic JRPGs that they brought back and re-released either on. Actually, I think it's all primarily on the Game Boy systems and the handheld systems for Nintendo. And I've played them, and I've even played some of the iPhone versions of it. And no, you know, it's actually not, they're not that fun. They're great, and they're neat, but they become little cult hits, and they're like a nice little homage, and it's like, thank you very much for that little, little extra piece. Throwback, and that's it. The only way a game can be revitalized, and that's what I'm talking about with all of these games, is the goal is to revitalize them, to... bring them back, is to bring them back in a new context, right? Mm-hmm. Or a current context is a better word. So I don't think it would work. Because we have seen them before. We have seen them bring back other games in little tiny, like, SNES formats.
But they did Bravely Default on the 3DS, and that was real cool. So what if they breathed life into it like Bravely Default?
There's definitely a market for that whole, handheld, I guess you call it a handheld market, really. But the thing is that market is doomed, right?
Oh,
eventually,
absolutely.
The mobile market and the tablet market will take over. Nintendo will have to eventually give up on it. That share is shrinking considerably. It's still making the money right now, but it won't forever, unfortunately, right? In the end, we're looking at eventually having even one whole system. Eventually, the PlayStation and the Xbox are going to disappear, and it's just going to be some sort of singular device that we're going to have. And these guys are all going to be writing you services, and you're going to be subscribing to the PlayStation service.
Yeah, that's probably true.
So
let's look at that. Mike's back to being cynical as fuck. It was only one part of the segment where I had to take over.
I'm not cynical.
No, not at all. 8 weeks of doing this podcast.
Practical.
I think we can say we call whatever we want.
It's practical. That's the word we'll use. And no, I like a lot of things.
I'm not saying you don't like them, or you just take the less optimistic point of view on things a lot of times. No, but Chrono Trigger is an all-time classic, and it would be cool to see them bring that back. I'm surprised they don't play with it. It would be
interesting as hell to figure out how they would, though, because like they would have to bring it back with some sort of update, right? But like the idea of Chrono Trigger being like looking like Final Fantasy 15, I don't know if that actually sounds appealing. Right?
Well, no.
It would have to be cartoony like Kingdom Hearts.
Well, it would have to be cartoony like... It's the same... It's Akira Toriyama, the Dragon Ball Z guy.
Yeah.
Designed those characters. It would be like Dragon Quest.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, it would have to be cartoony.
Right?
Or not even cel-shaded. Just cartoony. Like, like Kingdom Hearts. If it was like Kingdom Hearts that came back,
Yeah.
Cool. But if they tried to do like ultra hyper realistic, which that seemed like the direction they were taking it when they switched to Chrono Cross, yeah.
That was that era though. That's so long ago. It's hard to say what they do now. They might stick closer to its roots at this point.
I think.
But it's weird that the Chrono series just died off in the PS1 era, and it was never.
Because like even though Chrono Cross actually was considered not to be a massive success, it still was a success, and the series has a shit ton.
The thing I always hear about Chrono Cross is like it's a disappointment, but it's not bad.
No, it's not bad. It's just disappointing it wasn't as good as Chrono Trigger. But that's the thing, like, it was still a big game, and lots of people loved it, and people are still, worshipping Chrono Trigger to this day.
Yep.
So, like, it's one of those ones that's a little bit more baffling that it never came back, considering it's got number one on all the charts. So, like, why wouldn't you continue that series?
Mm-hmm.
If you made that series good and really delved into it, you could have 2 Final Fantasy level series.
No, that's true.
Like, why not? Alright, so what's your third game that you want to see come back?
Third game I want to see come back is a game that ended with a 3. Pregnant pause. I would love if they continued Dead Space.
Really? That's on your list?
Yeah, it's on my list.
Huh.
So,
but they finished the whole story, didn't they?
I don't give a fuck about the story.
Oh.
So here's the thing. Yeah, but like this year, Dead Space 1 and 2 were so good. They had just had like such a great atmosphere and very fun gameplay. Like the whole like severing mechanic of all these different monsters. It was so much more fun than aiming for heads all the time.
Yeah.
It was just it was interesting that you'd have to like, and you got all these cool weapons where like you could, and they had different modes. Like it was so cool to have to sever like the limbs of something to make it, and it would still start coming after you. It would start crawling across things. If it took us legs, or if it took us arms, it could still run. It could bite. It was just a very interesting mechanic, and like the more I ruminate on that series, like afterwards, like first when Dead Space came out, I was like, oh, it's not that scary. But like it doesn't matter if it was, like it scared me as much as it was just very atmospheric. It just had this kind of sense of dread about it, even if it wasn't like scaring my pants off every second.
Yeah.
But the third game really ruined everything. I played it with my buddy from Thunder Bay actually online because it was co-op. They turned to co-op.
Really?
They turned to co-op. There was a bunch of microtransactions where you could buy all the stuff to upgrade your weapons. And as much as I love upgrading weapons in games and stuff, it just wasn't. That wasn't for Dead Space where I wanted to be doing that with my weapons. And I understand where they were coming from because Isaac was a mechanic and that was the whole thing. He was an engineer and everything. All his weapons were made out of engineering tools in that universe, mining tools and stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, I didn't like how far they took it, and it didn't. And if I thought the first game wasn't scary, the third one sure as fuck wasn't. Like it was kind of like action, at that point.
Yeah. And
I just didn't end up enjoying it anymore. That being said, if they brought it back and they brought it back to its roots, I would love to have another space horror game like that. The first one was almost very alien-like. They had this almost like gothic looking spaceship with its architecture, right?
I think that the design team on that, like, got flopped around so much that it kind of dissolved the game over time, right? Like, they were trying to be loyal in the second one, but still lost a bit of it. By the time they hit the third one, it was gone. And they had wrapped up the story. I almost say that, like, the better option would be is not to bring back Dead Space, because I think that's been covered, and I think, like, people are just going to be like, alright, like, thank you very much for more Dead Space, but then it's not going to become a massive commercial and critical success. But you're right. I think another sci-fi survival / combat, like horror-esque game has to come back. But I think this applies to everything. I mean, like that's why we're also looking for that in sci-fi. There hasn't actually been a really solid, like sci-fi horror that's come out in a while.
I would even love if the Bloodborne team did like Bloodborne 2, but made it space.
Well, it was just going to make a whole new game based on sci-fi and creepy monsters.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Yeah, like. That would be the game that I would think would have to come next. I'm not really sure if Dead Space in itself really needs to continue as a series.
That game, it just controlled so tightly. It was so satisfying, like the feeling of shooting and stuff. It had good movement. Like everything about it was just great to me. I had really good memories of that game. And
it's also a game that's very you, though, right? Like weird, creepy, like lots of tendrils and monsters and
absolutely.
Stuff.
Well, that's why it's the franchise that I want to come back, not the franchise I think is going to sell 1 million units. Yeah, who knows? Dead Space was successful, but the first one was the most successful. The second one was a little less, and the third one was even less than that. So, But that's because they were ruining it slowly. Like, that's the thing, so...
Yeah, the thing is, sometimes with series like that's just about it, and I think maybe a fresh series is the key to, really drawing this out. Like, drawing out a new franchise on it. And I think it's really important to start drawing out new sci-fi horror stuff, right? Which is funny enough, tying right.
Well, maybe they reboot it and take it in a completely different direction,
But even just going back and tying it back to what we were talking about with what's his name, Ridley Scott, doing an R rating on the new Alien movie. Like, I would love to get some honest to god sci-fi horror back in.
I agree.
He invented that genre with Alien.
Mm-hmm.
I would love to get some more.
I don't disagree with you.
So, for me, then, my fourth game out of 5 that series that I want to see come back is definitely much more niche, but I love these games so much. Was the Tenchu Into Darkness series. Oh my god, I had...
Mike's standing on an island alone in this one.
No. I love that game so much.
I know you do. We were actually talking about this game a while back, and you're like, the ninja game. And I was like, Ninja Gaiden. You're like, the ninja game. Shinobi. The ninja game. Ninja Gaiden on Sega. Like, I had no idea what he was talking about.
I couldn't go over it. It's like, there's nothing else to say about the game, but it's a ninja game. But it was 100% ninja. Like, you actually had to run along the rooftops in this Asian town. That was like all of those like thatch roofs that you used to run along, and you could slide up to all of them with your grappling hook. And you could, when you ran away, you had to throw cattle traps behind you and like slow them down so they wouldn't catch up. You couldn't actually sit in a group of multiple foes and fight because you'd just die. And it was like so true to stealth. Like, you could sit on top of like this building and then wait for someone to walk by, drop down, and like do these awesome killer moves and kill them. Or you could like throw out a ninja star, and everything was so sensitive to noise, and this was early. And it even continued on for 3 sequels. And one of the sequels, it had 2 things in it. One was that you had this new option where you could throw a latch right up to a roof, and you'd fly up to the roof and do like that star thing where you hold yourself up against the wall.
Yeah.
And you could like Spider-Man yourself up so people would walk under you and you wouldn't be spotted, and you could wait.
That's pretty Black
and drop
Star.
Down. Yeah.
I like that.
Which was really cool. But then it also had a versus mode where you would get in, and your goal was to assassinate each other, right? So you'd have this whole room, and there would even be other like bad guys in it if you wanted, but you had to go hide and try and outsmart a human being from seeing you in this game, right?
You're kind of selling me on it, but
but it worked out so well. So I remember I had played really long time against my cousin who just kept kicking my ass in it, and then I started getting really good, and then I started playing against my friend Shanna, who was pretty natural in most games. And she started to win a few fights here and there, and I was getting like, argh. So I started pulling out like all the stops. And I remember I set up this perfect one. I lowered all her health with all these traps and tripwires and stuff along the way, all the way into this one room. And then I threw a smoke bomb down and ran, because I knew like trying to get into like a sword fight with her was just going to be pointless. It wasn't going to work. Ran into this other room, slammed the door behind me, grappled myself up onto the roof and did the star thing and held myself up to wait for her to drop down. She apparently saw me do that, so I was like, alright. And she hit me with a ninja star and I fell to the ground, so I'm like, I'm dead, I'm so dead. I had like almost no health left. I miraculously somehow got up, and no one uses cattle traps in that game. No one uses cattle traps in that game. I hit the wrong button while she was chasing after me to just get one sword swing in the back of my head, and I just went, instead of turning around and attacking like I thought I would to finally drop her, I just went and threw the cattle traps down and turned around the corner, and you could see her like I couldn't get through it. I just threw a ninja star back and got her in the head.
Accidental
and it was
strategy.
Like, it was like so ninja, and it was completely by accident, but it was literally like this ninja move where I was just like, my secret techniques, and so good. I love those games so much, and they were so awesome. And the stealth in it was the best and most fun stealth I've ever gotten. And the only game ever where I honestly felt like a true, honest to God, in the shadows ninja.
100% ninja.
100% ninja. It was so good.
Well, I only have like one memory of this game where I ranked it at some point. Like, I don't have any fond memories of it, so I'll take your word for it. That sounds like a cool game.
Oh, it was so deep. It was so good. That has to come back. With today's technology behind that engine and those ideas,
if someone can make a real good ninja game, I don't even care what guise it's under, but like make
make a new Tenchu and just use today's technology. It would just you're done. You would have a good game. You could just literally redo the graphics and just update the engine. And I wouldn't care. It would be fucking brilliant. And your fourth?
Mike just wants HD remasters. You heard it here.
Oh, no, I don't. Good God, I don't.
I realize that everything I've said so far has been a horror game. So I'm gonna mix it up a little bit and say that I want Final Fantasy Tactics to return.
Don't they have some sort of rumor out that something like it's coming?
So there was the guy who made Final Fantasy Tactics left Square Enix a couple years ago, and he made a Kickstarter for a thing called Unsung Hero, which is supposed to be a spiritual successor. And apparently they just, I don't know if they I'm not going to say they stole the money, but like, they have not updated in many, many months. They haven't showed fuck all in 2 years, it seems like. You know, they showed some backgrounds, so like, we might show some combat, and then they just did not update for another, like, 6 months or something. It's a little ridiculous. But, I would love to see again. I love tactics games. They don't seem like something I would like a lot of times, because it's very slow moving, you gotta think what we were doing, but I always really, really enjoy them.
I'm not an
I even
guy
love
at all.
Tactics Advance 1 and 2.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm not an RTS guy at all, and yeah, I really actually enjoyed Final Fantasy Tactics. It's one of the few RTS games I've ever played that I enjoyed. Is it RTS, as that was called?
Real-time strategy? RTS to me is a like more like XCOM. It's like real-time, right?
Oh, yeah, it's like real-time strategy. So those are what? Strategy games?
Tactics strategy? No, actually, no, you know what? They're probably the same. It's probably the same thing as XCOM, yeah.
I think it is. Doesn't matter. And it was kind of real-time, right? Because, like, even though you did have turns, like, things could happen, like, when you were in between. Like, you're like, shit.
No, you're right. Yeah. I'm wrong. No, yeah.
Those were fucking brilliant games. I mean,
they're just
the
so
art
much
style
fun.
alone,
Like, I poured hours into Advance 1 and Advance 2, just like, going the side quests, just so I knew I could get the best weapons, and you know, like, it was just so much fun making your party, and, like, building your white mages and stuff, and they could have the subclass that they could use. Your white mage could also be your summoner and stuff like that, and you'd be very strategic about it, because then you could have, the ninja abilities, which are all very good, with the warrior class, you know, so he was very, very strong, and then, I love that, like, not a ton to say about those games, but I really, really enjoyed them, and I wish they would come back.
There is a ton to say about them. I mean, like, it was really fun was that, like, the art style was different in comparison to most other Final Fantasies at the time, and it was new, and it was really exciting and fun to see. The sound effects in it, I remember, were just, like, really memorable. The story was also really interesting in the way that it wasn't like other Final Fantasies, where it was like the save the world thing. It was actually quite dark, and, like...
Are you talking about Tactics, or are you talking about Tactics Advance?
Tactics.
Tactics, I never understood the story. Way too convoluted.
It's really complicated.
Did not understand the translations.
Yeah.
Tactics Advance, I thought had a cool story, because you were those 3 kids, right?
Yeah.
You got sucked into the Final Fantasy world or whatever.
Yeah.
And, like, the interesting thing about that was, like, the one kid became like a king. The girl became like, she was like wandering like rogue with her like bandit groups and stuff, and they were both having a lot of fun. And you were just this kid who was like, I want to get back home, and like, I'm gonna ruin this for everybody. I'm gonna take us back home. You were kind of the villain, you know. You were kind of like the bad guy. You're taking this cool world away from everybody. You're going around slowly destroying these crystals so you can fuck up this world so you could get transferred back home. Like, really cool. I enjoyed that story. I understood it.
It was simpler, so I got it.
That's my new review scale for movies. This one was good. I got what they were going for. He was a 40-year-old virgin. He wanted to have the banging.
And you just kind of like demonstrated your own intelligence level. You're like, the other ones were too smart. I'm not smart.
The first one, no, but in my mind, the first one wasn't smart. It was just way too convoluted, and I don't think it was translated very well.
It wasn't. It was not translated very well. But
so I just didn't know what was going on.
And it was complicated, but it was very deep, and it had a lot to say once you did kind of break through everything.
Sure. Once it loses me in the first like hour, though, it's never going to get me back. That's why I just start skipping cutscenes.
You're not helping yourself here, man.
I just skip. You hear that noise? It's me hitting the skip button. That's different.
That's when you don't come in.
No, a lot of games just don't have good stories, so I just don't bother.
Yeah, but come on, like you in the first hour. That's like getting into a movie. It's like your parents when you watch a movie with your parents. And
that's being
like
generous. If the first opening cutscene does not grab me with their hook, I'm like, I'm out. I just put a podcast on and I just turn the volume down and like I'll just enjoy the story. I'll just enjoy a podcast where like the story just happens.
See, the thing about this. No, you know what? I'm just gonna look at you in shame.
Games have bad stories. Like, 90% of games have bad stories. You can't tell me otherwise.
Yeah, but the games we're naming are the best games out there, which have good stories.
Listeners, I want you to comment, tweet at us, do whatever you can to get in touch with us, and tell me, did Final Fantasy Tactics have a good story?
You're going to get a huge amount of yeses.
It absolutely did not.
There's a lot of people who worship the story of Final Fantasy Tactics.
It didn't. Who was that? Who was that man? I agree. Thank you for your support.
So clever.
You know
Talking into your hands.
You know what the audacity. No, you know what the weird thing about the Tactics series is? Square Enix still acknowledges it. It's not just like something that, it's not like Chrono Trigger where they just pushed it back and they were like, no, like we're not even going to talk about this. Tactics, it got remade on the PSP. The War of Lions, it came out on the iPad. Mm-hmm. Like it's still being actively updated. Like they know there's a fan base for it. They know there's fervor for it. People want it still. It's sold enough that they.
But I thought Square Enix released something about more information on a new Tactics. I thought there was something at some point. This could have been years ago.
But the new lead on the Tactics games, I think he said something a little while ago. I could be wrong.
No, I thought I saw something. It was at one of the E3 or I don't know. It was something else. But whatever it was, I remember seeing some sort of inkling that they were like working on a new Tactics. But it was a pretty strong confirmation of what was going to be coming on. I mean, I could be wrong. It also could be one of those things that they mentioned it years ago, and then suddenly we got no news.
Yeah, something like that.
So I mean, like it's not. Like I can't say I know this for sure. I just remember hearing something because I swear that was something like that. But we'll come back to that, and we'll hit on my final and fifth, and probably my top.
Ooh.
One to want to return of all. And that's the Xeno series. Primarily, I would like to see more within Xenogears, right? Again, another story that's pretty much seen its end. Like we've seen the source of where Xenogears came from with Xenosaga, and we kind of got it, right? But I want to see them start to delve into that more. The Xenogears universe and world on that planet, well, completely explored and the story was over, like everyone lost their powers at the end, basically. They can always figure out how to make more. Mm-hmm. Was so cool and really dark for this kind of like starting off bright and playful game. But that game was so deep and so emotional and so dark, with so many great things and so many things being revealed that were like so cool, and like the science behind like their fake science was just like mind bending, and then. Top it all off. I loved a good 2D RPG at the time, and this was like a 2D, 3D RPG. And the combat system in that. The first time I played Xenogears, the very first time, was actually on one of those demo discs back in the day. And that demo disc had Xenogears on it, and that Xenogears, that was a brilliant move for a demo, had 3 characters, which you weren't supposed to have at this time when the game played. And those 3 characters all had their full... abilities unlocked, so that when you went into this area, you could just go ahead and see what like end game content would look like in this demo. And so like you're running around, killing bunnies basically with giant key attacks. And in that game, if no one knows, in Xenogears, they had this. It's a system that's been reused ever since, but it was great at the time and still holds up. It was like different key or button arrangements would activate different attacks. Like triangle, circle, X would activate one, right? And that would be the one where like the main character, I think his name was Feng or Lee, whatever, would like flip backwards up in the air and go Dragon Ball style on whatever was in front of him. Or like other attacks that were more basic without energy would be like, square, triangle, X, and then instead it would be like this actual combo where like square is a punch, and then triangle was this like spin back punch, spin back uppercut, and then X would be the execute to it, and it would turn into this combo where you kick it in the air, jump it up in the air, smack it into the ground, and then like spin, grab it, and body slam it backwards, right? And there was like, I don't know, maybe 21 of these, that you could do, and every character had one, this whole list. And then you got the gears, where eventually you were able to literally get into, and I think this was the first time in an RPG where you could do this, get into the giant gears, and they all had their own combo list that all could do major kung fu.
It's interesting that I don't think a mechanic like that was ever used outside of Xenogears.
Yeah, I mean, it was getting used in Xenosaga and the other continuations after that, but we were mentioning it before when we were looking at the list. Shoot, what was it called? The game had the picture of a guy with blue hair on it on the front. It was a PS1 game. We were just looking at it. I can't find it.
Brave Fencer Musashi.
Way off.
Hey, I matched your description.
You did match my description, that's the thing.
Shout out to Brave Fencer Musashi. Love that game.
Yeah, I was trying to think of others that did the same. There are other games that did it afterwards in the 3D context. A couple of them on PS1 and PS2. It definitely was something that continued after, but I always found that system was actually almost always perfected inside of Xenogears because it always felt so good to be doing what how it felt to play in Xenogears. And then the story in it was convoluted, but it was eventually very clearly explained, and it was so in depth, right? And releasing that virus on the world that turned half of them into just mutant flesh, and then in the end the goal of turning everyone to mutant flesh was to make them into the flesh of God, and just brilliant work. Brilliant work. I also had an extremely high fever and thought I was actually the main character when I played it, so
I remember you telling me that story.
Yep. Just one of my top games. The Xenosaga series.
So wait, was there a robot in that one?
There was robots in all of them.
No, there was an anime girl robot.
Maybe there was an ultimate attack at the end where you could basically summon what was a Gundam.
I don't remember if these are the right games I'm thinking of or not.
Maybe not.
Probably not.
But Xenosaga 1 I actually really loved because it had a very similar battle system to the others, and the story was really unraveling with a lot of really depth and coolness. I felt that Xenosaga 2 was actually horrendous in its combat system, and it detracted so much from the game that the story started just to get lost, and its convolutedness became frustrating because I didn't care about playing, and the story was convoluted, so I didn't really want to have to bother unlocking it. And I finished it just sort of I wanted to get this done.
Mm-hmm.
But then I finished 3. So, not the greatest end. So I really think they could go back to Xenogears, where the core beauty of that series lies, and just make me proud. I'm
sure they absolutely could. I know our intern in Vancouver, I know that he really, really likes Xenogears, one of his favorite games of all time.
Oh,
he replayed it not that long ago. I think it's available to play as a PS1 classic.
Yeah. It was, before they did the PS4 thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the PS4 classic stuff isn't all up to date. PS3 had all the best classics.
Yeah, you might have played it on PS3 then.
Yeah, and I did when I had my PS3. I replayed it probably 3 or 4 times. I love that game.
This is just a little love segment, for the most part.
Yeah, it's all good.
Yeah, a love segment.
Make everyone feel happy.
Yeah.
Let everyone know that there was good stuff.
There still is.
I know there is. There's shit tons of great games out there.
Yeah. We're just ruminating on the days of the past. And
things we want to come back. There's just there's no reason to have left it dead. You know, there could have been so much more.
Yes, the thing. You want to see this series continue to grow and evolve, right?
The only one I don't agree with that actually I think that didn't want to continue is only Dead Space. That's the only one out of all of the lists that all of these could have easily come back. I think Dead Space was kind of finished, but all the others can totally have a return.
I still think there's room for another Dead Space, and I also think there's room for a 4th Parasite Eve.
Oh, fucking right! I forgot to put that on my list.
Yeah, right. Parasite Eve.
Oh,
those games were ahead of their time.
Oh yeah,
for sure.
Oh, that opening sequence where you're going in, and then she sings that opera, and then everyone starts catching on fire.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're in the back, and that rat just splits out of its own skin and turns into a monster.
I always remember in Parasite Eve 2. Do you play 2?
Maybe. I've always completely
there's a scene where you're in the motel, and you go into this person's room, and there's it was a cutscene at the time, and of course it was beautiful at the time too because it's a square, right?
Yeah.
And it was but it was this person turning into a monster, and their jaw started to elongate, and their cheek rip open, and that's just I was 8 years old at the time, and I'm like, yes, this is all I've ever wanted. There's just the cheeks rip open, and there's all this gore, and I was like, yes. But those games had real cool mechanics. You could use what were they called? Was it Eve? Or was it Parasite? What the fuck was it?
What, the powers?
Yeah, her powers. They were
based on her mitochondria.
Mitochondria, that's what it was. And yeah, you could stop, and there's weird polygon spiral came around you and stuff. You had these area of attack effects, and it was really cool. super enjoyed those games.
Yeah, the first one was really, really clever because it was the first time I can almost say this without a doubt, it was the first time an RPG used current technology, i.e. guns.
Mm-hmm.
So she had handguns that you had to get an upgrade, right? Yep. But these handguns could be upgraded with like power stuff eventually when you got further into the game. So yeah, they created like AoE effects and like spell effects. The best weapon in that game was like this auto gun that when you pushed it, it fired off every effect as it hit. So it was just nothing but this explosion of purple and green and lightning bolts. As
she felt powerful, and like was she a detective or a cop or whatever? Yeah, cop, and like it was just I loved it. Like I just loved the tone of those games. Like I wouldn't even say the atmosphere, just the tone. Like it was just I loved like that she was a cop and you were like going through this experience with her. Like it was so cool.
And like the thing was, there's even atmosphere in those games that were fucking brilliant. Like, and it was visual storytelling in it that was so good. So like some of it was filled in by like you finding things and stuff like that, and also like obviously through the game. But there were also certain story cues to let you know that the next thing had happened. So in the first one, right, Eve, the girl who turns into the big red monster, her whole goal was to try and procreate and create like the next thing, right?
Yeah.
So she's running around trying to figure out how that happens, and she's trying to find all the science behind it. And she finally figures out that all she needs to do is go to a sperm bank and shoot herself up with some sperm.
That's all it takes.
Yeah. So, but the thing is, when you're chasing her around and you get into the sperm bank, you're getting into an elevator when you're chasing up after her, and there's nothing there but a wheelchair and a leftover turkey baster on the floor.
That's right.
And you're like, oh, well, we know what she did.
Yep.
Like, it's over. She's pregnant now. And then, like, the last boss fight, after you kill Eve, which is a great fight, and it's really hard, you have, like, she gives birth to the baby thing, which looks like a seal, but like a sperm.
See, I don't remember this part.
Fucking.
I don't know if I would be.
It was creepy as fuck when that thing got born. I was like, holy fuck, and I couldn't figure out what we were supposed to do because it gets born and then starts moving towards you. So I'm like, obviously, I'm supposed to fight it.
Yep.
Right. So you run at it to initiate the combat, and it just kills you instantly. And I'm like, okay, what do I do? And it didn't have a clear like what was supposed to happen. So I'm like, okay, what do I? You're supposed to run away. You're supposed to run away, and you're not supposed to run away slightly. Like, you have to run like fuck, and this thing is way faster than you. So, like, it took like 30 tries of killing her and having to run the fuck from this thing. And it was horrifying when it chased you, and it kept mutating into new forms as it chased you, and getting like legs and shit, and I'm like, motherfucker! Like, I remember so panicked and scared of that thing touching me again, that it haunted me afterwards. I was like, no more. No more monster babies.
No more monster babies. Is that so much to ask? So no more monster babies. But Square Enix wouldn't listen. They said, no, here, have this abortion of a thing, and gave us Parasite Eve, the third birthday. I remember being so excited they remembered that this series existed. And it was on PSP, and I was like, sure, why not? I don't care. Test it on the PSP, see if there's an audience for it. But they fucked it up so bad. And now we're never going to hear from Parasite Eve again.
Mm. We've seen lots of games that have a huge flop, but it's not like a never come back.
I don't know, man.
But, I mean, the other two games were so good, you know, and it was such a great series and such an amazing idea. I would actually say it would be a really good idea for them to get away from the main character. Like, Aya's kind of done her thing. Like the whole story's based on, like, her having a very special set of mitochondria that's, like, immune to all the mutant ones and shit. But like, there's 6 billion people on the planet, 7 billion, or even close to 8 now. Like, we can find one more.
You're right. I don't disagree. It's just a sad way to see that series be dormant. It's been dormant for at least 10 years now, because this was in 2006 they did the last one, and before that it was, what, probably 1999?
I don't even remember.
Something like that.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, no, it's just sad to see these series go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's going to be it for this week's Pens and Pixels podcast.
It is.
And we're gonna sign off. If you want to find me, you can find me on Twitter at TheCalG. You can find Mike Kent at Mike Kent Draws.
Mm-hmm. Or we're Pens and Pixels, Pens and Pixels on Twitter, or all social media.
All social media, you can find them either at Pens and Pixels. Actually, everywhere's Pens and Pixels except for Twitter, right?
Except for Twitter.
Except for Twitter.
Because some asshole decided that they wouldn't give me that name.
Dickheads.
All of him and his 5 followers.
He's like, is this a scam? How much would you have paid him for that account?
I offered him $50.
Yeah, that's totally reasonable.
Yeah.
That's more than I would expect to make a name on Twitter.
Yeah.
You know what the most valuable names on Twitter are?
Mm-hmm.
Like the ones that are like single like letters, like A, B, C.
Seriously?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you go to any one of those letters, they all have like multiple thousand followers.
Huh.
I don't know why. I don't know if people just like all of a sudden typed in twitter.com/ like X and they're like, oh, of course I'll follow this. It's one letter. I don't understand.
This is my favorite letter. It should just post X every day, and it gets like 1,000 likes.
Do you think there'll ever be another
And like XX, and it's like 2 billion likes.
Do you think there's ever going to be another social media platform that really takes off, like takes over Facebook?
Yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, eventually.
You know, Peach just launched.
There's lots of other options, but I mean, everyone's like, "Oh, MySpace," but MySpace went away.
Yeah, but it's still around, I think, right? Like, didn't Justin Timberlake buy it or something?
Did he?
I might just be making that up.
Justin Timberlake.
I'm fairly certain it was Justin Timberlake.
Or Justin Bieber.
Oh, no. No, Timberlake.
Okay.
The NSYNC man.
The NSYNC man?
Yeah. Fairly certain that was him. Okay, well, goodbye, everybody. Bienvenue. Welcome. And au revoir.
There you go. You probably spent all day doing that.
No, my already.